Chapter 782, Cloud Mist Peak, 4. Su Luo woke up from sleep and felt that her mind was clear with invigorating vital energy. She held that dictionary-like book records of herbal medicine and ran the entire way to the study. Such a thick book, containing more than 10,000 kinds of medicinal herbal plants, all kinds of distinctive features and particulars that she needed to understand and memorize. This was simply challenging her physically to the limits. However, it was fortunate that she had her space as a cheating tool that could slow down time, changing an unbendable 3 days into 30 days. Otherwise, even with her photographic memory, she still wouldn't have memorized it all. Su Luo, with the sound of the rustle of her skirt, rushed in. Then, she looked up to peer at her surroundings. Very good, beautiful teacher still hadn't come yet. However, before she could wipe away her perspiration, Grandmaster Rong Yun had opened the door himself and entered. Today, he was dressed in a brocade robe that moved with the wind, mixing together elegance and nobility together into the peak of refinement. Suddenly, he seemed like an exiled immortal from the hidden land of peace and prosperity in heaven. He walked over slowly, when his gaze swept by Su Luo. His deep, pitch-black eyes flashed with the bright radiance of the stars. Grandmaster Rong Yun cast a glance at Su Luo, then he sat down upright. In a heavy tone, he said, "Finished memorizing it all?" "Know it by heart." Su Luo nodded her head. Grandmaster Rong Yun's expression was still indifferent as before, keeping to his words. "Know it by heart? Then you should recite it backwards for me to have a look."
Yes.
Su Luo smartly approached to stand in front of him. A short ruler stick sudden appeared in Grandmaster Rong Yun's hand. This ruler stick's entire length was jet black. It had the glossy characteristic of deep black crow wood. Deep black crow wood was heavier and harder than the refined black iron from the deep sea. Su Luo's mouth twitched. Was this prepared for when she couldn't recite it from memory? As corporal punishment for her? Recite it. For every word you recite wrong from memory, I'll hit you once. You should do as you see fit. Grandmaster Rong Yun's tone was cold. His gaze clearly was even more unsympathetic. Now, Su Luo was already capable of ignoring his prejudice. Having heard what was said, she nodded her head. With both hands crossed behind her back and full of confidence, she started to recite it backwards from memory. Basically, she could cheat. That records of herbal medicine book was right now placed in her space. If she forgot, she could go in at any time to flip through it. She could even do this by reading out loud that entire book. But 3 days before, beautiful teacher's pair of ice-cold eyes when he used a disdainful tone to say she was full of tricks had made Su Luo's heart stifled in a breath. Chapter 783, Cloud Mist Peak, 5. Through her face, Grandmaster Rong Yun's eyes seemed to have crossed over time and space. He seemed to be seeing a past event from a long time ago. That female, so beautiful like an immortal goddess, wearing a purple dress, her icy flesh on jade-like bones, with a beautiful complexion that was unmatched under the heavens. In the pitch-black palace halls, she was cold but still stood there. In front of her was a man wearing a strange mask, whose entire body was giving off a ruthless and overbearing aura. Thump! A thick and heavy book flew towards this remarkably stunning woman. If you want to save him, within 3 days, know this book by heart. The stunning woman picked up that book, determinedly turned around and walked away. 3 days later, as before, she sat in the palace hall that was painted black. The stunning woman stood composedly as she clearly recited. Chinese traditional medicine pellets level was always on its usage. Too much could be measured, but could not be used. The poisonous medicinal herb Wu Chan. Grandmaster Rong Yun was immersed in his memories. An unprecedented, intoxicating tenderness appeared in his normally indifferent pair of eyes. His pair of eyes stared fixedly at Su Luo motionless. A touch of doubt appeared in Su Luo's heart. Even though beautiful teacher was looking at her, but she was very clear, he was seeing another person through her. Only, who was that person? Capable of making beautiful teacher who was unmoved, had no desire, nor sought nothing, to give off such a tender expression on his face? Finished reciting. Su Luo, who had a dry mouth from reciting, finally gave voice to interrupt his thoughts. just standing there. She had stood for the entire morning. She hadn't stopped since she started. For these several hours, she had continuously looped through the matter of her top lip touching her bottom lip. Grandmaster Rong Yun was startled by Su Luo's voice, immediately waking up. The face that had always lacked emotions now had a thread of startled expression flashing through it. Immediately, he frowned. Staring at Su Luo said, "Finished reciting? Could it be Master didn't hear it?" Su Luo turned the tables on him for a checkmate. A touch of embarrassment streaked across Grandmaster Rong Yun's eyes. Only, the speed was very fast. Nobody saw it. Grandmaster Rong Yun picked up the teacup, drank a mouthful, and only then did he say to Su Luo, "To have memorized this book within 3 days, and to know it by heart so fluently in this world, is not limited to you alone. What do you have to be so conceited about?" Su Luo surreptitiously shot him a glance. Where was she being conceited? Why was it that the beautiful teacher would be so prejudiced against her? However, Su Luo was already accustomed to beautiful teacher's temper and didn't take his criticism to heart. Clearly today, Grandmaster Rong Yun was not in a good mood. He tossed out a sentence. "Within half a year, you must be promoted to intermediate apothecary." After he finished speaking, he immediately turned to go. He only left behind a flabbergasted Su Luo. With no homework left behind, how could she break through on her own? Was there that many teachers? Wasn't his role as a teacher too simple? Just at this moment, Ziran smilingly said to Su Luo, "Little junior sister, follow me. I'll take you to the refining room." Su Luo's brain whipped back, then asked Ziran, "You are also an apothecary?" "Merely Master's medicinal helper and nothing more," Ziran unconcernedly said. "What level?" Su Luo asked, trying to get to the bottom of things. "Merely advanced level, nothing more," Ziran smilingly said. "Merely advanced level?" As expected, to serve by beautiful teacher's side, every one of them was not simple. Even in the capacity of teacher's medicinal helper was also an advanced apothecary. If he was to walk on this continent, he absolutely would be a target that every powerful family would fall over themselves to fawn upon. "Let's go. Little junior sister's natural aptitude is astonishing. Your future accomplishments certainly won't be ordinary." Originally, Ziran merely treated Su Luo politely on the surface, but ever since Su Luo showed this skill today, afterwards, he was shaken to a stop. Able to memorize and recite records of herbal medicine from beginning to end. In his lifetime, he had never seen someone do it. Able to know records of herbal medicine by heart and recite it backwards. He reckoned that even in the next lifetime, he might not necessarily see someone do it. Chapter 784, Cloud Mist Peak, 6. However, what would astonish Ziran was far from just this. With regards to Su Luo, this kind of elementary apothecary, Grandmaster Rong Yun simply felt that it was too beneath him to teach her. Therefore, the heavy duties of instructing a disciple naturally fell upon Ziran's body. Rather, what shocked Ziran was, originally, for his first lesson, he wanted to teach Su Luo how to distinguish the biological activity of herbs. To be able to distinguish the biological activity of medicinal herbs was a knowledge that an intermediate apothecary must possess. Now, 10 stalks of dragon saliva grass was arranged in front of them. Every stalk looked about the same. Based on the naked eye, a person simply could not distinguish the biological activity between these herbs. Ziran taught Su Luo a lot of theoretical knowledge on how to differentiate the biological activity among plants. He even demonstrated it for her to see. Afterwards, he mixed up the 10 stalks of grass and said to Su Luo, "Now, let's switch to you doing it. Arrange these 10 stalks of grass based on biological activity from high to low." Now, Su Luo gave him a puzzled glance. "Use the method you taught me to differentiate them, or use my own methods to differentiate?" Ziran's face was full of doubt. "You still have a method of your own? Wasn't little junior sister just at the elementary level? How could an elementary level apothecary know how to differentiate the biological activities of the herbs?" Su Luo seriously nodded her head. "Naturally, there is, moreover, the speed is also very fast. The method that Ziran taught her was to distinguish the herbs through the stem of the leaves and various kinds of vein patterns. But this way was very complicated. Ziran didn't believe her and said, "Then let's see you give it a try." The 10 stalks of dragon saliva grass in front of her was already demonstrated by Ziran on how to order it correctly. Therefore, Ziran then mixed up their sequence for Su Luo to try. Su Luo didn't even bother to look at the dragon saliva grass on the long table. She even took out a black cloth to cover up her eyes. Ziran was stupefied by Su Luo's actions. "What are you going to do?" "To select the herb's biological activity, you bet with your eyesight." But little junior sister had covered her eyes. How was she to tell? Who would have known that Su Luo would then tie the black cloth at the back of her head? The corner of her mouth lifted into a smile. "Senior brother Ziran, just you watch. I guarantee you will not be disappointed." While Su Luo was speaking, her hand extended towards those 10 stalks of dragon saliva grass. Su Luo had originally thought that everyone was like her, through sensing, able to find out the biological activity of a medicinal herb. But last time, she asked Apothecary Long, and afterwards, she discovered that even he couldn't do it. Now, Ziran also seriously and meticulously taught her how to identify the biological activities of a herb. Only now had she determined that she was the only one who could, through sensing, differentiate the biological activities of a herb. One could only see that Su Luo had her eyes covered, and with her slender and white hand, touched a stalk of dragon saliva grass. She just randomly touched them once through, and then picked up the stalks of dragon saliva grass, placing them in the correct position in order. As a result, very quickly, she arranged those 10 stalks of dragon saliva grass in order, from left to right. Su Luo tore off the black cloth and made a single-handed, "Please inspect" gesture. "Senior brother Ziran, please examine it." Ziran and Z, you were not Grandmaster Rong Yun's real disciples. He only had 2 disciples, and they were Apothecary Long and Su Luo. Therefore, in terms of addressing them, Ziran and Ziyu's name had no ranking. In fact, Ziran had carefully observed Su Luo all along. After seeing her carelessly selecting and arranging those dragon saliva grass, a forced smile appeared in his eyes. Sure enough, little junior sister's age was still young, and liked to joke around. This way of being blindfolded and choosing as she wished, how could she properly select them based on the herb's biological activity? Seeing Su Luo inviting him to examine it over, he forced a laugh but also did not refuse. He only casually glanced at it and was just about to properly instruct Su Luo once again, to teach her what was called being steady and having a serious nature. However, just at this moment, a stunned expression flashed through his eyes. Because, as he started to look from the first stalk on the left, and discovered that it just so happened to be the first one he had selected before, based on biological activity. Chapter 785, Cloud Mist Peak, 7. Ziran did not believe in ghosts, so he picked up the second stalk, and then picked up the third stalk. When he had examined those 10 stalks of dragon saliva grass once thoroughly, his entire person was dumbfounded. He foolishly stared at Su Luo. His mouth opened and closed, but he could not speak a word. Suddenly, he took out 10 stalks of 9-leafed grass from another small icebox and said to Su Luo, "Can Lit Junior Sister distinguish it again?" "No problem." Su Luo agreed very straightforwardly. Su Luo once again tied the black cloth to cover her eyes. After she completed this action, Ziran had already finished placing the 10 stalks of 9-leafed grass on the table. Like before, her 10 fingers fluttered about with movements as fast as lightning. In the mere blink of an eye, Su Luo had neatly arranged the 10 stalks of 9-leafed grass from left to right. Ziran took an astonished glance at Su Luo. Afterwards, he bowed his head to differentiate them. Compared to Su Luo's quick speed, his speed could be described as a snail's pace. Probably after a period equal to burning a stick of incense, he finally completed distinguishing the grass. Now, his forehead was coated with a layer of fine sweat. A pair of pitch-black eyes stared fixedly at Su Luo, flickering with rays of excitement. "Little junior sister, in the end, how did you do it?" The always calm Ziran, now, his tone carried a vibrato. Very obviously, just now, he had already confirmed the results. Su Luo's pair of eyes looked puzzled and asked instead, Could it be that when you pick up a stalk of herb, you can't sense its biological activity? How could it be possible? Ziran stared with both eyes wide open, then asked again, "You can really sense it?" Su Luo, at a loss, nodded her head. "I can sense its grief, its happiness, as well as all kinds of other mood. It really was like seeing a ghost while alive." Ziran said to Su Luo, "First, you stay here for a bit." Afterwards, he hurriedly pushed open the door of the refining room and quickly left. Not long after, Ziran returned. At this moment, Ziran's mood had already restored its tranquility, but his eyes were still flickering with a burning radiance. Little junior sister's natural gift is indeed incomparable. Congratulations, congratulations. What did Master say? Su Luo curiously asked. Master said, junior sister's body is a divine one for refining drugs. Among the apothecaries, there is only one divine body for every 10,000. Ziran was clearly more excited than Su Luo. This kind of divine body, the lowest achievement it can reach, is an elite apothecary. Junior sister, you have boundless prospects. Ziran repeatedly congratulated her. Beautiful teacher being submerged in such an enigmatic aura. Could it be that Master also has the divine body to refine drugs? Su Luo blinked her eyes, but in her heart, she was somewhat certain. Ziran recalled the scenes when he was refining drugs with Master. Often, Master's fingers would slide across numerous stalks of medicinal herbs. Afterwards, it would seem as if he carelessly picked one to toss into the drug refining furnace. Before, no matter how much he thought, he couldn't understand how he could so easily select them. But now, it seemed that Master absolutely had a divine body for refining drugs. Ziran admiringly stared at Su Luo. Su Luo was stared at by him until her heart was a little scared. Little junior sister, do you know, just being able to identify a medicinal herb's biological activity. I, your senior brother, had studied a full 10 years to learn it and finally pass. Ziran looked at Su Luo, full of grief. This 10 years, she basically didn't even need to study. By one touch, she would know the high or low level of that stalk's biological activity. He recalled when, just now, he went to find Master to report this. Master's expression was unperturbed. Not a bit of difference could be seen on that tranquil and calm face which was without a single ripple. Very clearly, Master had known earlier of the matter of little junior sister having a divine body. It's no wonder why Master set Li Yaoyao up, allowing her to be snatched away by Fairy Yin Xia. Afterwards, he then justifiably accepted little junior sister as a disciple. Chapter 786, Dumbstruck, 1. Ziran looked at Su Luo in shock, while Su Luo looked at him as if this was normal. As expected, constantly comparing yourself to others will anger yourself to death. Ziran waved his hand, scattering the still hadn't emerged envy, hate, and jealousy from his mind. Since Su Luo already didn't need to study this subject, then we'll directly jump to the next course. The next subject was to learn how to condense out and control the fire element. However, when Su Luo shot out the flame she used especially to refine drugs, Ziran once again nearly collapsed. When refining a medicinal pellet, the higher the fire element's grade, naturally, the better the medicinal pellets that were refined out. However, the flame Su Luo used especially to refine drugs, naturally, was taken from the little divine dragon's third type of true fire. Once this third type of true fire came out, Ziran finally was directly in awe. Little junior sister, your flame is such a rich and pure flame. Even though he was already an advanced apothecary, he still couldn't condense out something like this. Is there a problem with this flame? Su Luo looked at him with a puzzled and lost expression. Wasn't it said that the higher the grade of the flame, the better? The little divine dragon's flame was so strong that no one could overcome it. You wait a moment. Ziran excitedly waved his hand towards Su Luo, then turned around and ran out. Seeing the always calm and collected Ziran trembling and running out, the corner of Su Luo's mouth curved up into an arc. This time, Ziran returned very quickly. His forehead was coated in a thin layer of perspiration, his expression somewhat complicated. Su Luo's clear and bright eyes looked at him innocently. Ziran wiped away the sweat on his face, pretended to be calm and lightly coughed. It's fine. This course of condensing out flame doesn't need to be taken. Oh. Su Luo nodded cleverly and obediently. Looking at Su Luo's appearance, Ziran almost couldn't bear it and wanted to go up to rub her head. Elementary apothecary, ah. She was merely a very small elementary apothecary. However, those difficult problems that would perplex an advanced apothecary for a lifetime, to her, it was completely effortless. What kind of goddamned rhythm was this? Even if it was Ziran, this gentle as jade-cultured child, seeing Su Luo, this kind of evildoer, he couldn't help but want to burst out with some foul language. Since you don't need to learn medicinal herbs' biological activity and condensing out a flame, then Ziran took a deep breath of air and decided, then let's go select a medicinal cauldron. Medicinal cauldron, oh? Su Luo had a somewhat hesitant expression. Her gaze wavered somewhat. If she told Ziran the truth, don't know if he would become insane from astonishment. After all, today, with regards to him, he had been shocked enough times. Ziran didn't know what Su Luo was considering in her heart and thought that she didn't understand. As a result, he smiled a little. Master has collected quite a few medicinal cauldrons in the medicine warehouse. Now, let us go immediately to pick one. Those few medicinal cauldrons of Master's were all superb. He had coveted them for many years. But Master didn't ever mention to give him one. Just now, when he went to report the matter of little junior sister's control of the flame, Master had said to take little junior sister to the warehouse and let her go pick one as she wished. Let's go, Ziran smilingly urged. Su Luo was just about to go, when an icily arrogant voice sounded in her mind. Then you don't want Zihua's medicinal cauldron? This proud and pampered voice that carried a touch of sticky childish characteristics was a tone Su Luo was very familiar with. Only, Su Luo didn't understand. What's the difference between Zihua's medicinal cauldron and picking a medicinal cauldron right now? However, when that irritable little brat spoke, he completely didn't understand what was called courtesy. Idiot. Zihua's medicinal cauldron has stored the images and memories of when Elder Zihua was refining medicines. With regards to your refining, it has the result of doing half the work and getting twice the effect. Seeing Su Luo remain unmoved, the little brat coldly snorted. There is very little difference between Zihua's medicinal cauldron compared to the medicinal cauldron your teacher is using now. On this continent, you still want to find an even better medicinal cauldron. I'll gift you with 2 words. Not possible. Chapter 787, Dumbstruck, Too Fine. Su Luo conceded that the little rotten child's manner of speaking was no good, but all the things he said was a fact. Elder Zihua from back then was a Grandmaster-level apothecary. The beautiful teacher right now was also a Grandmaster-level apothecary. In the recent several hundred years, rumor had it that only the 2 of them had reached the Grandmaster level as an apothecary. Thinking up to here, the corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked up. Her eyes were smiling as she looked at Ziran. Senior brother, wait. What's up? Could it be you don't want a medicinal cauldron? Too late. If you wait for Master to change his mind, it will be too late. Su Luo smilingly shook her head. Please, will senior brother evaluate this medicinal cauldron and see how it is? One could only see Su Luo wave her hand. Suddenly, a reddish-purple medicinal cauldron appeared in front of Ziran. However, the first thing after wasn't Ziran going to look at the medicinal cauldron. Rather, he had his mouth open wide as he stared at Su Luo. You actually are. Ziran was shocked that his mind became somewhat stupid. Space mage? How is this possible? According to his knowledge, space mages were very rare on the continent. Of course, Master was one among them. Is it really strange? Su Luo pretended to be at a loss as she looked at Ziran. Ziran gestured with his hand. I ask you to let me calm down. Calm down a bit. Originally, he thought she was merely an ordinary little girl. Originally, he had not understood why Master would use every possible means to get rid of the Jade Lake's fairy, and instead choose this kind of little girl. Only up till now did he deeply understand Master's profound plans and foresight of the future. This little girl, at first glance, was an unremarkable elementary apothecary. But, when performing an in-depth investigation, she would cause a person to explode from shock. The basic quality of her body, the divine body of legend. Medicinal herbs, biological activity with one touch. She could differentiate. Condensed out flame was actually the highest grade of deep purple color. In addition, she was also the same as Master, being a space mage. Su Luo saw him unable to return to his senses for a long time and couldn't help but tug at his sleeves. Senior brother, could you inspect that medicinal cauldron? If it is good, then we don't need to go and pick one from Master's collection. She would even look down on Master's medicinal cauldrons? Ziran was thinking of reprimanding Su Luo when he glimpsed that medicinal cauldron from the corner of his eyes. Merely one glance and his entire person was stupefied. This time, without waiting for Su Luo to urge him, he directly rushed up. Almost his entire person was lying on top of that medicinal cauldron. That pair of eyes was practically sunk deep into the top of that medicinal cauldron and would never be pulled out again. This medicinal cauldron. Ziran excitedly touched it once through. Very quickly, he felt out the words on the bottom. Zi-hua. Zi-hua. Immediately, Ziran's pair of eyes were opened wide until they were perfectly round, bursting towards Su Luo. This medicinal cauldron is the one Elder Zi-hua left behind. Zi-hua's medicinal cauldron, right? Zi-hua's medicinal cauldron. That was the divine tool that all of the apothecaries sought under the heavens. According to accounts, using Zi-hua's medicinal cauldron, the success rate of refining drugs would be raised by twofold. Elder Zi-hua was the sole Grandmaster-level apothecary back then. He was famously brilliant. Afterwards, no one knew any trace of him. But now, this Zi-hua's medicinal cauldron would so suddenly appear in front of him. Confronted with Ziran's pair of eyes that was emitting a burning radiant light, full of expectations, Su Luo nodded her head and said, "This is indeed Zi-hua's medicinal cauldron." Didn't know why, even though beautiful teacher was very picky with her, but Su Luo trusted him 100%, to the extent that she also didn't conceal anything from Ziran. Elder Zi-hua's medicinal cauldron. Elder Zi-hua. Ziran had a difficult time covering up the excitement in his heart and mumbled to himself. If you must know, back then, there was only Elder Zi-hua as a Grandmaster-level apothecary on this continent. Master had only been promoted in recent few years from Master Apothecary. You wait here. Ziran speechlessly took a glance at Su Luo. Afterwards, again, he started to run out. Chapter 788, Dumbstruck, 3. Seeing his silhouette as he left, Su Luo gave a bitter laugh as she rubbed her chin. Was her performance today too shocking? To the extent that the gentle and calm Ziran had become as excited as a hairless child. Grandmaster Rong Yun was wearing a wide white robe, the soft, luxurious robe's hem piled up like warm clouds. Layer upon layers of it was folded up and arranged at the edge of the red sandalwood chair. He sat upright under the branches of a wisteria tree blooming with flowers. He was just in the process of playing chess with himself. Beside him was a small red clay teapot that was giving bubbling sounds of tea that was simmering. Having heard Ziran who, with a slight trembling voice, gave his report, Grandmaster Rong Yun casually placed a chess piece down. He did not lift his eyes and only faintly said a sentence. "Got it, you can go now." Master was not the least bit surprised. However, he had already stayed beside Grandmaster Rong Yun for many years. He naturally understood a bit about his indifferent temperament, so Ziran silently retreated. After Ziran had left, Grandmaster Rong Yun tossed aside the chess piece in his hand. He leaned back on the wide red sandalwood chair. His slender white fingers beat a tempo on his armrest. Grandmaster Rong Yun's face showed a smiling expression as gentle and warm as jade. It was as intoxicating and resplendent as the blooming peach blossoms in April. This girl, Grandmaster Rong Yun bitterly smiled and sighed, shaking his head. Ziran once again returned to the refining medicine room. What did Master say? Su Luo blinked her eyes. Ziran waved his hands. Only Master's amethyst gold medicinal cauldron could be compared to Elder Zi-hua's medicinal cauldron. How could any others compete with it? Naturally, Master will let you use Hua's medicinal cauldron. It was truly enviable and made people jealous. This time, little junior sister's stuff was already complete, only waiting for her refining skill to reach a certain level, then she would automatically be promoted. In the following month, Ziran looked after Su Luo at his side. Little by little, he carefully gave her pointers. Sometimes, Ziran would see Su Luo's crude refining hand technique. He wished he could rush up and chop off her hands. With such heaven-defying conditions, her refining hand techniques were so coarse that it was even worse than an elementary apothecary's. I am completely self-taught, Su Luo explained and defended herself. Ziran had no way to respond and said, fortunately, at that time, there was no examination on the spot for refining drugs. Otherwise, with your crude hand skills, wouldn't other people have laughed themselves to death? Even though Ziran said words like this, he was still very patient as he corrected Su Luo's mistakes bit by bit. This was also the difference between the wrong method sects and the upright sections. Su Luo was incomparably glad that she had won against Li Yaoyao at that time. Otherwise, just depending on her fumbling around, when would she improve? It's no wonder that she couldn't advance no matter what. With Ziran's careful guidance, she was able to endure for a month and a half. On a moonless and windy night, Su Luo finally advanced to intermediate apothecary. Su Luo's intermediate apothecary status was different from others, because when she was at the intermediate apothecary level, she could refine medicinal pills that were at the advanced grade. This point made Ziran so envious that his eyeballs were about to pop out, because, based on his level as an advanced apothecary, the spirit restoration pills that he refined were only a little bit better than the ones Su Luo refined as an intermediate apothecary. Little junior sister, I am already unable to teach you anything else. You should go find Master. Ziran rubbed his nose with an expression that was crying and smiling at the same time. Who would have thought that this girl's learning abilities would be this strong? All kinds of conditions that were exceptional advantages she enjoyed as an apothecary were nothing compared to her. She actually had a strong retentive memory and worked hard to a heaven-defying degree. It was only a little more than a month, and he felt that his several decades of apothecary knowledge had been emptied out by her. In fact, Ziran didn't know that the time in Su Luo's space was slower than actual time by tenfold. In the future, I must follow Master Ah. Su Luo couldn't help but sigh faintly. Chapter 789, Dumbstruck. 4. If you were to say that senior brother Ziran was the sunlight in March that bathed the spring winds, then beautiful teacher was the ruthless cold of December, so ice-cold and pure as to make people's heart give birth to reverence. Yes, Ziran rubbed Su Luo's head. You simply do not need to pay attention to the evaluation during these 3 months. Such a genius apothecary for refining, who would be willing to drive you out? Mentioning this little junior sister, in the beginning, was really not worth looking at, but now, the more he looked at her, the more he liked her. Su Luo exited the medicine refining room and discovered that the sky outside was pitch black. There was only that bright moon hanging high in the sky. There was still a faint light in Master's courtyard. Su Luo couldn't bear it and wanted to tell him at the earliest possible time the news of her being promoted. Therefore, she walked over. Within the small study, there was a light, so Master must be inside. Normally, Su Luo would get her lessons in the large study, and this small study, Su Luo had never entered before. The door to the small study was open. Master is not here? Su Luo walked in and her eyes swept all around. Puzzlement flashed through her eyes. Since Master was not here, then she would come tomorrow morning to tell him the news. Su Luo was just about to turn and leave, but suddenly, the corner of her eyes shot towards the wall. A painting was hanging there. When she saw that painting, Su Luo didn't know why, but her entire body became stiff. That was a painting of a beautiful woman. The setting was on top of this cloud mist peak. Brilliant white snow covered the distant peaks, so chilly as to be threatening to people. But the women in the painting had on a white muslin dress that danced like butterflies. Star-like specks of pink plum blossoms were embroidered on that loose dress. A soft purple silk about 3 meters long that looked like a diaphanous mist was wrapped around her arms. The same colored wide silk was tied around her slender and willow-like waist. This glance could hypnotize a person, deeply stopping them, and their gaze would not be able to shift away. When she glanced at that face again, Su Luo only felt that her soul was jolted. How could there be such a face? The words, capable of causing the downfall of cities and states, was not enough to describe her beauty. Even if this stunning complexion had makeup on, it was still unable to cover up that stunning complexion. Skin as white as snow, so delicate that it could be broken by a puff of wind. So tender white that you could almost squeeze water out, even though it was within a painting. But that pair of eyes seemed as if they were alive, so quick-witted as if they were roaming about. She had an indifferent expression. The corner of her mouth was lifted into a cold arc like a fairy from the 9th layer of the heavens. Graceful and elegant, yet she had a goddess-like, pure and cold heroic spirit. Model of a queen. Su Luo unconsciously thought of these words. She clearly had never seen this face before. However, why did it seem familiar, giving her a sense of déjà vu? Su Luo scratched her head, showing her puzzlement. At this moment, the sound of light, unhurried footsteps came from outside the door. Master? Su Luo's heart was startled and turned her head to look back. Under the moonlight, beautiful teacher unhurriedly walked over. That face that could drive all living things crazy, and eyes that flashed with resplendent lights like the stars. 10 slender fingers were easily carrying a jade bottle. Clearly, the liquid in that jade bottle was sake. Rong Yun saw Su Luo, and a darkening expression flashed through that pair of stunningly beautiful eyes. His voice immediately became ice-cold as iron. "Why are you here?" At this time, his entire body emitted a frightening dark atmosphere. That atmosphere made Su Luo's back tremble with a chill and made her body become stiff. This was a chilliness that came from deep within the heart. "Master?" Su Luo licked her chapped lips. The door to the study room was open. Is this place one that you can enter as you wish?" Rong Yun's complexion was a haze as he angrily shouted. It was truly walking into a disaster. If she knew earlier, she would not be so curious and would have directly walked away. Su Luo secretly sighed, but on her face she cleverly drooped her eyes. This disciple will immediately take her leave. Su Luo, with hurried steps, walked past Rong Yun's side. However, before she could walk out the door, a voice suddenly came from behind her. "Halt." Chapter 790. Dumbstruck. 5. As a result, Su Luo could only stiffly stand there and look at the doorstep that was only 1 step away. "Come back." Rong Yun's voice was hoarse, dark, and overcast, as if from being drunk. "Oh." Su Luo once again obediently ran back to his side. "Kneel down." Rong Yun pointed to the floor. "Kneel down?" Su Luo's heart was immediately startled. She, Su Luo, with regards to kneeling, would kneel to the ground for her parents, but she didn't have a habit of casually kneeling before a person. However, without waiting for Su Luo to ponder, Rong Yun's eyes unprecedentedly exploded forth with coldness. "Kneel down?" Such a frightening master. Su Luo's heart trembled slightly. "Oh." A puzzled Su Luo obediently kneeled towards the beauty in the painting. Was this beauty somehow related to her? Otherwise, why would Master demand that she kneel? Su Luo wanted to ask. However, when she made contact with beautiful teacher's unprecedentedly strict and cold eyes, her heart became slightly alarmed. Now is not a good time to ask questions. Rong Yun's pair of deep eyes penetrated deep into Su Luo's heart. However, he withdrew his gaze after one glance and turned to look at that painting on the wall. Time passed, bit by bit. The night became deeper and deeper. Unconsciously, Su Luo had kneeled there for more than an hour. Su Luo continued to maintain the proper back straight kneeling position. At this moment, her gaze moved back and forth between beautiful teacher and the beauty in the painting. Puzzlement flashed through her eyes. What was wrong with beautiful teacher? He made her kneel down but then ignored her. He only continuously stared fixedly at the painting on the wall. She admitted that the beauty in the painting was an incomparable beauty under the heavens. But that was only a painting. Ah, Master. Su Luo gave a yawn, which interrupted her speech. She had kneeled until her legs were numb. In the end, what was Master thinking? Only now did Rong Yun return to his senses. It seemed as if he had just seen Su Luo. His eyes wrinkled slightly, then he said coldly, "Just such a short time, and you cannot bear to kneel anymore?" Su Luo secretly snorted in her heart. It was not because she was unable to kneel anymore, but the point was that she did not know who she was kneeling to. Wasn't this just kneeling for a person for no reason? It's not as if she was Duan Yu, one, who would kneel and kowtow whenever he saw a beautiful, fairy-like older sister. At last, Rong Yun sighed slightly. "You can get up." "Oh." Su Luo obediently rose and, even in passing, rubbed her knees that were somewhat numb. "Accompany your teacher in drinking a cup of wine." Rong Yun's voice was faint, carrying a trace of frustration and disappointment. Su Luo's senses were sharp. She could detect there was something different about beautiful teacher's mood. She couldn't help but take a quick glance again at that painting with the peerless beauty. When all was said and done, who was this mysterious female? Who could affect the immortal like, without desire, not seeking anything beautiful teacher to this degree? Is she Master's wife? Su Luo's mouth was faster than her brain and directly asked. Only after the question left her mouth did she return to her senses. She had inadvertently asked the thoughts in her heart. Hearing Su Luo's words, Rong Yun's expression was clearly jolted. His sharp, pitch-black eyes flashed with a complicated radiance. He stared at Su Luo without blinking. Master's eyes were too clear, too bright. As bright as a sharp blade directly piercing a person's heart. So bright that nearly all the darkness would have no place in front of him and would vanish. However, this time, his eyes had a peculiar expression. "Say what you just said once more." Rong Yun indifferently lowered his head to pour himself some wine. His slender white fingers held tightly to the jade bottle. The sake was poured into the amber cup. The faint fragrance of wine pervaded through the air in the small study. Could it be that teacher didn't hear what she said clearly? Su Luo had some doubts from the bottom of her heart. However, teacher gave a command that she dared not defy. Therefore, Su Luo obediently repeated it once again. "She is Master's wife." That's right. This time, Su Luo used a declaring tone. Based on her exquisite sensitivity and having watched too many melodramatic tales in the modern times, Su Luo had faintly guessed a bit of this story. 1. Duan Yu is a character from Jing Yong, a famous writer of martial arts novels. Most of his novels have been made into TV dramas and movies. Duan Yu is a character from his book Demigods and Semi-Devils. Simply put, he was a prince who likes beautiful women. Here is the wiki page if you are interested in learning more. Chapter 791. Dumbstruck. 6. She used a declarative sentence precisely to probe this issue. Rong Yun seemed to have seen through her thoughts and indifferently said, "She is not." "Oh, she wasn't?" The puzzlement in Su Luo's eyes became even deeper. Just a moment ago, she had clearly detected that when she used an assertive tone to say those 4 words, the corner of beautiful teacher's eyebrows nearly flew up. It could be seen that he greatly admires the beauty in the painting, but it was also hoping but could not approaching feeling. Having guessed this point correctly, Su Luo's gaze once again looked towards the woman in the painting. Within her recognition, beautiful teacher was almost perfect. In terms of appearance, his was one that would absolutely drive all living things crazy. With regards to refining medicine, currently, he was the only Grandmaster-level apothecary on this continent. With regards to cultivation, his was simply too deep and unmeasurable. In terms of position, all 10 powers would rush to curry favor with him. With regards to charisma, Fairy Yin Xia pursued him persistently and could never obtain him. As a result, in her eyes, beautiful teacher was absolutely second to none. However, the woman in the painting did not want him. The faint desire to gossip appeared dimly in Su Luo's heart. "Master, who is she?" Su Luo's eyes flickered with a curious radiance and got closer to him to ask. Rong Yun's hand that was holding the wine cup trembled slightly. However, very quickly, his serenity was restored. "You do not need to know." What was returned to Su Luo was Rong Yun's normally cold tone. "Oh, Su Luo dragged the syllable very clearly. It seemed that she wanted to continue. Seeing her beautiful teacher pour his own wine, Su Luo acted in a kissing-up manner and moved close, snatching away the jade bottle. She poured the sake into the empty amber wine cup. Master, since she is not Master's wife, then where is Master's wife? Su Luo pretended to be a curious baby, as if she was inadvertently asking. I have no wife. Rong Yun's tone was flat. So it's like this, Su Luo understood. So her beautiful teacher was secretly in love with the beauty in the painting and remained a bachelor for life. This feeling has waited until it became a memory, merely being dazed but had stopped by then. Come, Master. This disciple offers you a cup of sake in salutation. Su Luo poured herself a cup of wine and raised it up to give a toast. However, when Su Luo recited out aloud that poem, Rong Yun's complexion was obviously jolted. Who taught you this poem? Rong Yun's voice rose as he suddenly asked. Su Luo held up the wine cup and didn't know how to explain. Who taught her? This poem was one she learned in modern times. Could it be that she needed to tell the truth? But if she spoke the truth obviously, Master would not believe it. Seems like it suddenly appeared in my mind. Even I cannot explain it. Su Luo opened her mouth and spouted some bullshit. Rong Yun frowned and muttered to himself, this is impossible. Could it be she had returned before? Master, what's wrong? Who had returned before? Drink your wine. Rong Yun coldly reprimanded. His expression was still immersed in the verse from the poem. But Su Luo's heart was not this calm. Simply Rong Yun's few isolated phrases from just now caused a divine light to flash through her mind. However, it quickly disappeared and she was unable to catch it. Seeing beautiful teacher drinking a belly full of wine, Su Luo thought for a bit, and in the end, she still asked, Master, you who possess such remarkable abilities, could you help this disciple with something? What is it? After drinking the wine, Rong Yun's eyes shone even brighter. It was so bright that the bright stars had become mere props. Master, you should know I am not Su Xian's biological daughter. Su Luo put down her wine cup. Her complexion was held back slightly and continued. So I want to ask Master to help me search for my true origins. Nangong Luyun had already searched this before. However, whenever his search reached a crucial point, it would always be cut off by a powerful expert. This made her heart fill with doubt and also more curiosity. If her background was so simple, then it was impossible that Nangong Luyun would not find out something by now. Chapter 792, Beautiful Teacher, 1. In fact, Su Luo was just probing if Grandmaster Rong Yun had something to do with her origins, because she faintly felt this profoundly mysterious beautiful teacher seemed to be well aware of everything. Everything was within his control. He brought along Li Yao Yao at his side and went to Eastern Ling to accept a disciple. Fairy Yin Xia then appeared to snatch away his disciple. It seemed as if everything was within his expectations. If the first time was a coincidence, then the second time, the third time? As a result, Su Luo unblinkingly stared fixedly at Rong Yun, her eyes flashing with the light of hope and expectation. Your background? What background do you have? Just letting your imagination run wild. Rong Yun did not even look at her, lifted the cup in a toast, tossed back his head to drink down a cup of wine. Su Luo's heart was tangled. Beautiful teacher was obviously telling a lie. Did he really take her as a 3-year-old child that didn't understand anything? Su Luo made a fist and snorted twice. You are right, I don't have any background. I don't know who my father and mother are. Maybe I just popped out from the crack in a piece of boulder. While Su Luo was saying nonsense, she was also taking furtive glances at beautiful teacher. Seeing that he still remained unmoved, that pair of deep, beautiful pupils that was as tranquil as the surface of the sea that lacked a ripple or a wave. Very good. Being aloof, huh? The light in Su Luo's mind returned. Maybe my dad is a major pirate on the seas, a bandit on a dark mountain, a heartless and fickle person. All kind of slanderous words flowed from Su Luo as she recited it all once through in a row. Fine. Beautiful teacher was still drinking wine as before. Otherwise, he either didn't know her biological father or his heart had some blame for her father. Her biological father wouldn't work, then she should start from her mother. Su Luo shot a glance at the painting on the wall, clenched her teeth and snorted once. Also, don't know who is my mother? Maybe I'm so ugly as to be a total mess. Maybe my style is no good. Maybe I'm a bastard child. I'm the daughter from my mother's illicit affair. Bang! A heavy sound of a palm slamming onto the table. A deep palm imprint immediately appeared on that sturdy table made of crow-black wood. It was a shocking sight to see. This murderous-looking palm print, even though it scared Su Luo until her heart jumped, but it allowed her to be certain of some things. Sure enough, Rong Yun lifted up a pair of scarlet eyes. He ruthlessly, fiercely, and darkly glared at Su Luo. The always indifferent as a god grandmaster Rong Yun. How could he give off such a fierce and strict expression? It could clearly be seen that he was truly angry. Shut up. Rong Yun's white and slender hand gripped Su Luo's delicate neck. His voice was like an azura from hell, each word dripping with blood. If you dare to say one more word, do you believe or not that this master will directly choke you to death? Meeting that heartless, bloodthirsty pair of icy eyes, even though Su Luo had already made preparations, a trace of overwhelming shock and horror flashed through her heart. In the end, what kind of person was her mother? She was actually able to emotionally stir up the legendary, indifferent, Buddha-like beautiful teacher to this degree? Master. That pair of hands was like iron clamps. The strength was as heavy as a mountain range. Su Luo was choked until her complexion became reddish-purple. Rong Yun swept an indifferent glance at her. His hand loosened as he abandoned her. Afterwards, he returned to his original seat and strongly tossed down another mouthful of wine. Following the release of his hand, Su Luo was finally able to gasp for breath. She dropped back into her seat and took huge mouthfuls of air. It took a long time for her original reddish-purple little face to be restored to its former color. Only, she still looked somewhat pale, even though she nearly lost her little life. But Su Luo did not completely reap no harvest. Very clearly, there was still no clue to her biological father's story, but on her mother's side, the relationship was linked in countless ways to Master. In this stiff atmosphere, Su Luo licked her lips but didn't start to talk first. Since Master didn't yell at her to get lost, then he must have something to tell her. Your biological mother is the most beautiful woman under the heavens. Sure enough, after quite a long while later, beautiful teacher lifted up his wine cup, looking at the bright moon outside the window. He said this sentence faintly when his face seemed distracted. Chapter 793, Beautiful Teacher, 2. The Most Beautiful Woman? Su Luo's gaze couldn't help but look towards that painting of a beautiful woman on the wall. From her perspective, no matter how beautiful, it still couldn't be more beautiful than the person in the painting, right? Beautiful teacher, with regards to her background, wouldn't breathe a word of it to anyone. With regards to the beauty in the painting, he cared extremely about her. Just now, he even ordered her to kneel. Suddenly, a light flashed on in Su Luo's mind. In the next instant, she unconsciously pointed to that painting. Could it be she is however, before Su Luo could finish speaking, she saw Rong Yun's pair of eyes that gave off a chill stare at her icily. Shut up. Su Luo was shaken from the bottom of her heart, however. She didn't ask again. Want that foolish boy to live, then you will cease investigating this matter. Finished speaking this sentence, Rong Yun abandoned her, turned around and left. The night wind poured in through the door that was not shut. Su Luo shivered from the cold. That foolish boy Master spoke of was very obviously Nangong Luyun. Sure enough, matters relating to her in the imperial capital, he had observed it all. He moved to intervene when Nangong Luyun continued to investigate people. Was this really unrelated to Master? At that time, the plan to place her as a very small infant to be raised in Su Manor, did it really have nothing to do with Master? However, why won't he let people investigate? If it was investigated, then what kind of consequences would it have? Su Luo's pair of long, delicate, and shapely eyebrows pinched slightly. She could faintly feel that her background was not that simple. Su Luo, in the small study, was blown by the cold wind for a night. and still couldn't think of a reason why. As for on Master's side, it was even harder to ask a word. Su Luo heaved a helpless sigh. Master just wouldn't say it. She also didn't have a way to pry it from his elder's mouth. In a flash, Su Luo had already stayed on Cloud Mist Peak for more than half a year. This more than half a year's time, Su Luo was almost completely engrossed in the world of refining medicines. Half a year earlier, she had already broken through to the intermediate apothecary level, and now she could faintly feel that she was about to break through to advanced apothecary. When she told Ziran about this faint feeling, Ziran was so shocked by her that the medicinal herbs dropped to the ground with a bang sound. "Little junior sister, do you still want another person to live?" Ziran heavily rubbed Su Luo's head. This simply made a person admire her greatly and be very jealous. This kind of promotion in levels for refining medicine was simply defying the laws of nature. When she first got here, she was a young rookie that didn't understand anything. Even though she could barely be considered an elementary apothecary, at first glance, it could be seen that her hand skills in refining medicine was self-taught. They were so coarse that it made a person simply unable to continue watching. But in less than a year's time, she actually was about to reach the advanced apothecary level so soon. If an apothecary wanted to advance a level, that was extremely difficult. Sometimes, they could spend several tens of years' labor and still might not advance a level. But this loathsome girl in front of him, would she truly advance 2 ranks in a row within a year? "Senior brother, you look here." Su Luo handed over the latest spirit restoration pills she had refined to Ziran, who was staring at her somewhat foolishly and blankly. Ziran accepted the offered white jade porcelain bottle and poured out the spirit restoration pill into the center of his palm. The spirit restoration pill was snow white as jade, bright, clean, and pure, giving off a faintly sweet scent. Ziran merely glanced at it slightly and knew that this spirit restoration pill was absolutely not an ordinary product. What this girl did that made a person in the same profession collapse the most was not her promotion speed at refining medicine. Rather, the medicinal pills she refined, the quality was absolutely first class, and also, she, as an intermediate apothecary, could almost refine a medicinal pill comparable to one in the advanced level. Now, Su Luo, this girl, was already at the summit of an intermediate apothecary, only a step away from being promoted to advanced apothecary. As a result, the medicinal pills she refined could already be compared to the ones made by Ziran, this advanced apothecary. Master's eyesight really does see and plan far ahead, really makes other people admire him. Ziran silently sighed. Compared to you, Li Yao Yao, that bit of talent is really not worth looking at. Chapter 794, On the Road Down the Mountain, 1. Maybe on that day, he still couldn't understand why Master would abandon Li Yao Yao and then choose Su Luo, who was merely an elementary apothecary at the time. But after more than half a year's worth of miracles, it made Ziran realize how far-sighted Master was. At last, he finally saw clearly, with regards to her talent, perhaps even when Master was young, he might not necessarily be better than this girl. Ziran was looking at Su Luo with a complicated gaze. Then he waved his hand and dispiritedly said, "Go look for Master, okay? Go. Oh." Su Luo cheerfully ran out to find beautiful teacher. Rong Yun looked at the spirit restoration pills Su Luo had refined, and his temples moved slightly. "Master, could there be a problem with this medical pill?" Su Luo saw beautiful teacher's pair of eyes staring fixedly at the medical pill and doubtfully asked. "It's barely satisfactory," Rong Yun said in a non-committal tone. Su Luo wrung her hands. Senior brother Ziran was stunned to such a degree, but in beautiful teacher's words, it got a barely satisfactory evaluation. Alas, Master's requirements were really too harsh. "Put things in order. Tomorrow, you will go down the mountain." Rong Yun's gaze was looking outside the window. Su Luo pointed at her own nose. "Are you talking to me? Here, apart from you, is there a third person?" Hiccup, but going down the mountain, wasn't she at the most critical moment of attacking the advanced apothecary barrier? Why was Master ordering her to go down the mountain? "Your strength is too lacking." Rong Yun slanted a disdainful gaze to size Su Luo up. "All right," Su Luo admitted. With her strength of 5th rank, she could still run amok a little bit in the Westernling Empire, but in Master's eyes, it was really unworthy. Although you are at the 5th rank, you still lack real combat experience. If an experienced individual with the same rank came, could you beat them? Rong Yun's words were so sharp as to show no quarter, but it pointed directly to the core of the problem. Su Luo conceded that these words were quite correct. Although she had advanced in rank time and time again, but in the end, she lacked the battle experience. If the opponent was to fight with their life at risk, she could very well come to grief. The magic beasts surrounding the dark forest are neither strong nor weak. They are just right for you to practice with. Rong Yun's words allowed no rebuttal. Oh, Su Luo only had the option of complying. This past year, you have been busy with refining medicine. This time, when you go, you must gather 3 red acacia seeds. This will be very helpful for when you try to break through to advanced apothecary. Red acacia seeds were a top-grade herbal medicine. They grew in the southeastern Great Valley of the Dark Forest. This herbal medicine was essential for promotion to advanced apothecary. Okay. Su Luo obediently accepted the order. Master's words closely aligned with her intentions. Originally, she had wanted to take a trip to the Dark Forest earlier because she had very little herbal medicine on hand, while she held the primeval pill recipes that made people drool in her hands. If she wanted to refine the medical pills in the primeval pill recipes, the necessary medicinal herbs were absolutely not the simple ones that could be purchased. Before, she had taken these primeval pill recipes for Master to see. If they were useful to Master, naturally, she was willing to offer them to him. However, Master had only glanced at it slightly before returning it to her again. Therefore, afterwards, Su Luo didn't mention it again. It seemed to her, the primeval pill recipes Master had in his hands certainly wouldn't be a few. This time, Rong Yun didn't accompany Su Luo. Rather, he dispatched Ziyu to protect her. Ziyu and Ziran were twins. Their appearances were nearly identical. However, Su Luo could differentiate them with just one glance, because their temperament were truly too obvious. Ziran was gentle and graceful, very easy to get close to. However, Ziyu was cold as icy frost, and wouldn't say a word for a long time. Ziran's direction of cultivation was apothecary studies, but Ziyu's was completely the opposite. He was utterly ignorant about refining medicines, but his martial arts cultivation was unfathomably deep. Even now, Su Luo still didn't know to how high a degree was his strength. Chapter 795, On the Road Down the Mountain, 2, this time. The order to go down the mountain was very sudden. Su Luo left soon afterwards with Ziyu on the second day. As Rong Yun looked at Su Luo's gradually receding figure, a complicated ray of light flashed through his eyes. Master, aren't you afraid of little junior sister meeting with a mishap? Ziran worriedly asked a sentence. Having interacted with her for more than half a year, Ziran already considered Su Luo to be like a real younger sister from his family. In his words existed a considerable protectiveness towards her. Only after a long time did Grandmaster Rong Yun sigh slowly. If she can't even pass this trial, how could this continent depend on her in the future? He waited for a long time, but Ziran still didn't get the second half of the sentence. This continent will depend on little junior sister? Ziran's eyes opened wide in astonishment. The mysteries of heaven must not be revealed. Grandmaster Rong Yun looked in the direction of the eastern sky that was tinged with sunset hues. Complicated rays of light flashed in his pitch-black like ink eyes. This was her inevitable set task as a goddess. Inescapable. He only wished she could grow up more quickly, because the time she had left was not long. Su Luo was completely unaware of the high hopes Grandmaster Rong Yun had placed on her. At this moment, she and Ziyu were dashing on the road to the magical beast forest. Hey, I say, senior brother Ice Cube, can we stop to rest for a while? Su Luo's smooth forehead was filled with beads of sweat, both of her hands propped up on her hips. She was panting as she firmly grabbed Ziyu. Clearly, Ziyu was not accustomed to others being so close. His figure jerked slightly and Su Luo's hands came up empty. Ziyu frowned. Those pair of eyes, accustomed to being cold as icy frost, indifferently glanced at Su Luo. Afterwards, he sat cross-legged under the shade of a tree in the surrounding area. Seeing him like this, Su Luo couldn't help but to heave a sigh. They had already come out for several days. Yet the words she and Ziyu had spoken, he only spoke 3 words in total. Okay. Oh. That's right. Just those 3 words only. Sometimes, he simply frowned. He didn't even snort. The last time, she was swindled by Nangong Luyun and taken along to Sunset Mountain Range. At least she had the dragon-scaled horse galloping the entire way. But this time, Ziyu actually wouldn't let her ride the dragon-scaled horse, forcing her to quickly run the whole journey using martial arts. He even said that this was Master's idea. Furthermore, this senior brother Ziyu was even harsher than Master when he was being strict. A continuous dash for 3 days and 3 nights, he didn't even give her a bit of time to rest. With great difficulty, she had a bit of time to rest. Su Luo hurriedly searched for a place in the shade of a tree. She sat cross-legged in meditation to restore her strength. However, before she could enter the state of cultivation, she instinctively sensed danger. Su Luo flipped open her eyes, but saw Ziyu's pair of eyes was tightly closed. He was steadily immersed in cultivation. According to senior brother Ziyu's strength, it was impossible for him not to have felt it. Su Luo frowned slightly. Just at this moment, the space between Su Luo's eyebrows suddenly jumped. There was danger. An arrow with thunderous strength shot towards Su Luo's back. Su Luo reacted due to instinct. Her body continuously backflipped, a total of 13 backflips in a row. Only then was she able to avoid that arrow's attack. When Su Luo wanted to warn Ziyu, however, she suddenly discovered he had disappeared. Goddamn it. Just at a time when she needed him to exert himself, where did he run off to? Without waiting for Su Luo to finish cursing silently, a figure in midair gradually became clearer. Li Yaoxiang, Li Yaoyao's second uncle, an 8th-rank expert. Su Luo's heart condensed slightly. Hump, loathsome girl. I didn't waste my Jade Lakesley family's time hiding below Cloud Mist Peak for such a long time. In the end, you still came down the mountain. In midair, Li Yaoxiang looked at Su Luo with contempt. The corners of his mouth curled up in a bloodthirsty sneer. Su Luo's eyes narrowed dangerously. Li Yaoxiang, you dare make a move against me. Aren't you afraid of my master's fury? He will tear down your Jade Lakesley family. The distance after leaving Cloud Mist Peak for 3 days, even if Grandmaster Rong Yun was an immortal, he still wouldn't find out. Li Yaoxiang's single sentence had destroyed all of Su Luo's hope. There was no trace of senior brother Ziyu. The little divine dragon was in a period of his sleeping phase. Su Luo felt that she was thoroughly covered in bad luck. Chapter 796, On the Road Down the Mountain, 3. Originally, with the little divine dragon's help, she still had the power to fight. But now, with only her alone, this was simply striking a stone with an egg. Senior brother Ziyu. Su Luo surreptitiously cried for help. However, the only response was the whooshing sound of the wind in the forest. Su Luo was suddenly dumbfounded. At the critical moment, senior brother Ice Cube actually abandoned her and ran away? Loathsome girl, this time, no one will be able to save you now. Except death. Li Yaoxiang burst out into loud and crazed laughter. His laughter hadn't fallen before a palm strike of wind, full of strength, launched towards Su Luo. The huge, pitch-black palm strike was earth-shattering like a dense black cloud. It pressed towards Su Luo with a pressure that hid the sky and covered the earth, so dark as to make a person's heart shudder. At this moment, Su Luo didn't have any outside help, so she could only depend on herself. This time, Li Yaoxiang didn't even bother to waste words, and didn't even give Su Luo any time to prepare. All of a sudden, Su Luo's pair of hands was like lightning as she quickly formed complicated hand seals. Very quickly, in front of Su Luo, that transparent nothingness of space appeared. That huge, pitch-black palm strike of Li Yaoxiang's containing a world-shaking power arrived with a terrifying aura that would frighten a person's heart. If she was slapped by it, Su Luo would immediately become a meat patty. When the great palm strike was about to smash down from above Su Luo's head, whooshed, one could only see Su Luo's figure, fast as light, and in a flash, squeeze into the nothingness of space. Just at the moment she squeezed in, that huge, pitch-black palm strikes of Li Yaoxiang's that carried the power of heaven and earth resentfully smashed down. A black fog enveloped the area and destructive force permeated all over the place. However, Li Yaoxiang's lips that were originally hooked into a sneer, in the blink of an eye, became rigid. Not dead? That loathsome girl was smashed head-on by this kind of handprint, and she wasn't even harmed a bit? Li Xiaoyang was simply stupefied, because he actually saw that girl standing in place, steadily and calmly. There was a tough layer that unexpectedly covered and protected her entire body. But this wasn't right. He also had a protective cover, but that only served as a defensive weapon. With his strength at the 8th rank, he could only produce a protective and defensive cover of the 8th rank. It was like this and nothing more. But Su Luo, this loathsome girl, was merely at the 5th level. Even if she could produce a protective cover, that would also be barely adequate at the 5th rank. How could it have withstood his own attack? In front of an 8th rank expert, a 5th rank was merely an ant. Now, the handprint with 70% of his strength, and she actually wasn't injured in the slightest? This was too strange. No matter how much Li Yaoxiang thought about it, he couldn't see where the problem was. But in front of him, the most important thing was to kill this loathsome girl as fast as possible. Then, destroy the body and wipe out all traces. Otherwise, if Grandmaster Rong Yun became aware of this, the consequences would be too horrible to contemplate. Thinking up till now, a ruthless and sinister expression appeared in Li Yaoxiang's eyes. Loathsome girl, you think you can really avoid it? Li Yaoxiang's pair of hands once again made a hand seal. This time's black fog was even denser than the one before. A huge, pitch-black palm strike smashed towards Su Luo once again. The strength of the palm strike was even more hair-raising than last time's, even more terrifying. Under the immense power of the palm strike, Su Luo's nothingness of space, that could only hold 2 standing people, was shaken violently for a period of time. It was as if a strong earthquake had swept by. Su Luo, who was inside, was affected by the wind of this palm strike. She swayed a little, then but sat down on the ground. Li Yaoxiang could see clearly. Su Luo's falling down posture was somewhat comical and hilarious. But how could Li Yaoxiang even give a laugh? Just now, he had used 80% of his strength, and it merely shook this girl until she swayed and sat down, but nothing more than that. Seeing her patting her buttocks as she stood up without a bit of internal or external injury, Li Yaoxiang was infuriated until he almost went insane. In fact, Su Luo wasn't as at ease as what she showed on the surface. The first handprint was fine. Chapter 797. On the road down the mountain, 4. The second handprint was excessively strong. When it made her sway and fall down, it also violently shook her 5 viscera and 6 bowls. Her blood and qi were boiled up until she nearly sprayed out a mouthful of blood. Also, what made her even more depressed was that just now, when the second handprint smashed down, her nothingness of space was like an egg that had been tapped, with cracks appearing. Loathsome girl, receive death. Li Yaoxiang furiously exploded out loud. He extended his palm, bringing out the gesture for 5 soaring dragons, and condensed all of his spirit force. It seemed to have the domineering power to swallow heaven and earth. Boom! Li Yaoxiang, without saying anything further, that palm attack containing the force of 5 soaring dragons exploded towards where Su Luo was standing. This time's might could topple mountains and overturn seas, and was actually greater in strength by a huge chunk than the one before. Fast, it was simply too fast. Fast as the legendary dragon that controlled the rain and floods, not giving a person time to even react. Rumbling, the handprint smashed on top of Su Luo's nothingness of space, exploding out with a burst of a violent rumbling and booming sound. The heavens and sky was violently shaken for some time. Being smashed and pounded by this handprint with all his strength, Su Luo's entire person was shaken violently. Crash, the nothingness of space that was already cracked transformed into nothingness. Having received such a violent attack, Su Luo was directly sent flying. Afterwards, she was heavily smashed against a tree in the forest. Bang, bang, bang. Because of the violent force of impact, Su Luo's body continued to be launched backwards. Several ancient trees with thick trunks were uprooted by her body smashing into them as they fell to the ground in place. She had smashed 30 to 40 ancient trees in a row before the force pushing Su Luo backwards gradually dissipated. Finally, she smashed into an ancient tree, and due to elastic force, she bounced back and was thrown to the ground. PFFF, Su Luo covered her chest. She only felt the sweetness from there. Then she immediately vomited out 3 mouthfuls of blood. Blood splattered like blooming flowers. There was blood all over the place and on the ground. It seemed sinister and terrifying. Haha, loathsome girl. You also have a day like today. Li Yaoxiang flew over like an arrow and steadily stopped 10 meters distance from in front of Su Luo. Su Luo felt as if her 5 viscera and 6 bowels had all shifted positions. Her qi and blood were rolling over like the waves of the ocean. She covered her chest that was in pain, supported herself with the ancient tree on the side. She swayed back and forth as she struggled to stand up. She had just opened her mouth wanting to speak, when a fishy sweet taste came from her throat, and another mouthful of blood violently came out. Li Yaoxiang, seeing this, became even happier. Loathsome girl, when you moved against Yao Yao, did you even think of today? To offend the Jade Lakesley family is the stupidest thing you have done in this lifetime. It's a pity that on this earth, there is no medicine for regret. Li Yaoxiang's appearance was malevolent. A very dark and sinister smirk hung at the corner of his mouth. Su Luo lifted her eyes, her expression cold. All of a sudden, the corner of her mouth hooked into an insincere smile. Li Yaoxiang, you really think you can kill me? What did this loathsome girl mean? Li Yaoxiang's brows nodded slightly. Don't tell me you still have another trump card? A scarlet bloodstain hung at the corner of Su Luo's mouth. But when she smiled, it seemed as if she was in glowing spirits. Her pair of eyes unblinkingly stared at Li Yaoxiang. The corner of her mouth hooked up and stressed each word as she said, I dared to come out alone. How could I not have a trump card? Today, since you have come to throw away your life, then let me help you accomplish it. Finished speaking, Su Luo suddenly fished out a round globe from her sleeves and raised it up high. Spirit pinball. Li Yaoxiang suddenly drew back. He retreated 10 steps in a row and still didn't feel secure. Then, he again retreated another 10 steps backwards. Loathsome girl, where did you get that spirit pinball? Li Yaoxiang was simply about to go insane from being infuriated by Su Luo. Why should I tell you where I got this spirit pinball? Su Luo coldly smiled as she stared at him sinisterly. Now, tell me what you will pick. Chapter 798, On the Road Down the Mountain, 5. One was to turn around and escape, and the second was to continue attacking. Now, only these 2 paths lay in front of Li Yaoxiang. Li Yaoxiang's arrogant and cold eyes glared at Su Luo. Remote and frosty light flickered in the depths of his eyes. Suddenly, the corner of his mouth slowly lifted into a sinister sneer. His pace was firm as he walked towards Su Luo step by step. Su Luo's eyes narrowed dangerously. The atmosphere froze for a split second. Spirit pinball? Since you have a spirit pinball, then give it to me. Li Yaoxiang sneered, darkly and fiercely. Immediately, he strengthened his hand and grabbed towards Su Luo's wrists. He did not believe that with this loathsome girl's good luck, that after she used one, she would still have another. Then I'll just give it to you. Su Luo glared at Li Yaoxiang and coldly laughed. The object in her hand suddenly smashed towards the opponent's chest. Even though Li Yaoxiang suspected that Su Luo's spirit pinball was a fake, but he was not 100% certain. As a result, when Su Luo suddenly threw the ball-shaped object towards Li Yaoxiang, he subconsciously retreated backwards. His entire body dropped to lie on the ground, and he covered his ears. Just at this moment of imminent peril, Su Luo moved her feet and broke into a run. The spirit pinball was a fake and simply could not explode. If she didn't run now, then until when would she wait to run? Su Luo's body was like lightning and explosively shot out. That spirit pinball dropped to the ground and did not move for quite a while. Li Yaoxiang, who was lying on the ground with both hands covering his head, cautiously raised his head and looked towards the spirit pinball. Merely in a split second, his old face was very red from choking back rage. Loathsome girl. She actually used a pebble stone as a fake spirit pinball to scare him. Li Yaoxiang's complexion was ashen. His eyes were ignited into two raging infernos. Because of his violent fury, the veins on his forehead throbbed faintly. Loathsome girl, do you really think you can escape? Li Yaoxiang coldly snorted. His figure quickly shot forward. Su Luo was jolted by Li Yaoxiang's palm attack, to the point that her blood circulation was in disorder, and her 5 viscera and 6 bowels had nearly shifted positions. Her internal injuries were so severe that she simply could not run fast. Very quickly, Li Yaoxiang's furious figure appeared close to her side. Loathsome girl, looking for death. Li Yaoxiang dove down from the skies like a falcon. His hand struck out like lightning and attacked towards Su Luo with a strength that could topple mountains and overturn seas. This time, he used 100% of his strength. In an instant, black clouds appeared above Su Luo's head to envelop her. With the power of 150,000 kilograms, the thunderous palm strike fiercely smashed down. If Su Luo was smashed by it, her body would be torn and her bones crushed to pieces. Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly as she stared at the black, wind palm force. A resolute expression streaked through her eyes. Just when the black, wind palm strike was about to smash Su Luo into a meat patty, suddenly, a strange figure appeared in front of Su Luo. Ziyu, who had previously disappeared, suddenly appeared in front of Su Luo. He raised his right arm. That was an arm glowing with a golden light, as if containing the endless strength of heaven and earth. Bang! Li Yaoxiang's wind palm strike collided with Ziyu's right arm, producing a violent sound of collision. It's you. Why are you here? Li Yaoxiang's face became stiff and his expression was hard. Originally, this loathsome girl was about to die beneath his palm strike. But now, another issue had popped up. Her lifeline was truly too great. Ziyu had always followed beside Grandmaster Rongyun as his bodyguard, so naturally, Li Yaoxiang had seen him before. Ziyu looked at him indifferently. His tall body stood in front of Su Luo, unmoving and not relaxed. He was like a towering, motionless, majestic mountain that gave people a sense of security. Su Luo stretched her head out from behind him and happily yelled, "Senior brother." Ziyu's cold eyes swept a glance over her, and then narrowed slightly as he looked towards Li Yaoxiang. Why would you be here? The moment Li Yaoxiang saw Ziyu, a bad feeling suddenly appeared in his heart. Chapter 799. On the road down the mountain, 6. Ziyu coldly and detachedly stared at him. Then his serious mouth slowly opened. You want to kill her? Her. Naturally pointed to Su Luo. Li Yaoxiang's eyes flashed slightly. Just now, when he briefly exchanged blows with the opponent, he could feel that the opponent's strength was extremely strong. But then, so what? When did the Jade Lakes family ever fear anyone? Moreover, even though Grandmaster Rongyun had accepted Yao Yao as a disciple, he readily surrendered her to Fairy Yen Xia. Now, this had already incited the entire Jade Lakesley family's resentment to soar. So, the moment Li Yaoxiang had recognized Ziyu, a murderous intent flashed through his eyes. They dared not attack Grandmaster Rongyun. However, to kill 1 or 2 outer court disciples to vent their anger, why would anyone care? Thinking to this point, an ice-cold smirk appeared at the corner of Li Yaoxiang's mouth. I not only want to kill her, but I also want to kill you. However, before he finished speaking, Ziyu had already taken the initiative to attack. Ziyu was a truly qualified hitman. His movements were efficient with quick and violent speed. He did not emphasize gaudy movement styles. In his eyes, there was only one word: kill. Boom. The two people came together to battle fiercely. Li Yaoxiang's black palm, with earth-shattering might, chopped down. Ziyu's arms, shining with golden light, seemed to contain the strength of heaven and earth. The two people battled fiercely in midair, occasionally traveling back and forth behind the layer of clouds. Their style and speed were so quick as to make people's eyes dizzy. Fast, it was simply too fast. Standing below, Su Luo watched the afterimages of their battle. An appreciative feeling came faintly from her heart. In the end, the black palm strike and the golden palm strike met each other in mid-air. It let out a fierce buzzing and colliding sound. After that one hit, the two people quickly separated. Ziyu steadily landed on the ground. However, Li Yaoxiang's body kept retreating backwards, continuously retreating. Countless ancient trees were split apart into fine dust by his powerful force. In the end, with a bang sound, Li Yaoxiang slammed into a 1,000-years-old ancient tree. Only now did his retreating footsteps halt. Cough! Li Yaoxiang's chest had been hit by Ziyu's palm. For a moment, he only felt his qi and blood rolling back and forth, and it was incredibly painful. Su Luo silently took a glance at Ziyu. Li Yaoxiang's current bitter experience was exactly the same as hers from before. It could be said that being forced like this, and was still granted another life. She didn't expect that senior brother Ice Cube would vent her anger for her, and still use this kind of method. Just when Su Luo felt faintly moved, Ziyu's pair of eyes like millennium-old ice burst out with a cold light. He indifferently stared at Su Luo and snorted, "Go up and kill." 3 black lines appeared on Su Luo's forehead. Just as she had expected, how could senior brother Ice Cube be kind-hearted enough to avenge her? He clearly only weakened Li Yaoxiang's strength. Afterwards, she still needed to go up and exert herself. Senior brother, just now you went too much overboard, disappearing without saying anything to me. Su Luo grumbled. When I disappeared, I have to inform you? Ziyu cast a glance at Su Luo, as if looking at an idiot. Su Luo scratched her head. Okay, she was truly an idiot. She actually asked such an idiotic question. But I'm injured. Su Luo pointed to the bloodstain on her body. Even though Li Yaoxiang was jolted by senior brother Ice Cube, to the point that he was vomiting blood, but his strength was still pretty strong. The corner of Ziyu's mouth moved slightly and showed an ignoring expression. Afterwards, without even seeing how he moved, Li Yaoxiang, who was far away, gave a blood-curdling scream, as if he was a pig being slaughtered. Li Yaoxiang stared helplessly as his right arm flew away. For a moment, his face became pale. Su Luo's eyes flashed slightly. In a flash, Li Yaoxiang's arm had been torn off. Without using any lethal weapons and only using 2 fingers, he was able to tear away Li Yaoxiang's arm. Immediately, fresh blood exploded all over the ground. Chapter 800, On the Road Down the Mountain, 7. This senior brother Ice Cube was really savage. Before Su Luo could finish silently cursing him, senior brother Ice Cube's ice-cold, heartless pair of black eyes had already shot towards Su Luo. Still not going over? Obviously, senior brother could kill him in the time it takes to lift a finger. Su Luo said in a blaming tone while humping twice. Don't forget the purpose of you coming out this time. Ziyu motionlessly slanted a glance towards Su Luo. When Su Luo looked again, his figure had already disappeared from the place where he stood. This senior brother Ice Cube was really too much. Su Luo grudgingly gave a sigh. Fine, Su Luo admitted that what senior brother Ice Cube reminded her was correct. The purpose of going down the mountain this time was to give her training through real fights, to enrich her battle experience. This was also the reason why senior brother Ice Cube disappeared in the beginning and afterwards would appear at the critical moment. Then, he beat Li Yaoxiang half to death before leaving it to her, and his reason for continuing to disappear afterwards. Only, did he have to be so stimulating? The first one to come was the 8th-ranked Li Yaoxiang, Li family's second eldest. Now, because of the intense pain, Li Yaoxiang had howled and shouted, until he suddenly stopped. He lifted his eyes, the scarlet pair of pupils searching all over the place for Ziyu. But now, how could there still be Ziyu's silhouette? As a result, his pair of eyes, as if dipped in poison, stared fixedly at Su Luo. Black clouds of hatred gathered in them. If it was not for chasing to kill this loathsome girl, how could his arm be snapped off? Li Yaoxiang's pair of eyes burst out with intense hatred. Go die. Li Yaoxiang's figure was like electricity. Not caring about anything else, he rushed towards Su Luo. The momentum of his rushing was like a tumultuous black cloud covering overhead. Bang, bang, bang. Li Yaoxiang sent out a continuous stream of palm attacks towards Su Luo, as if nothing else mattered. Now, Li Yaoxiang had sustained some serious injuries and also lost his right arm. His strength was not as terrifying as before, but a camel that was starving to death was still bigger than a horse. Su Luo was still pressured until she repeatedly retreated back. While Su Luo was retreating, her mind was also quickly revolving. What to do? It looked like in this situation, senior brother Ice Cube wouldn't appear again. Everything would depend on herself. Li Yaoxiang's wind palm strikes were hard and violent, fierce and tyrannical. If she was to face it head-on, she would absolutely lose. Since she could not match the enemy in strength, then she could only outsmart him. Su Luo, in her mind, rapidly tried to figure out a plan to outsmart him. Go die. Go die. Li Yaoxiang saw himself come up empty, and his jittery mood was close to going insane. While moving and dodging, suddenly, Su Luo's eyes lit up. After she drank some celestial spirit water and advanced grade spirit restoration pills, the nothingness of space that was shattered from before could once again be condensed out. As a result, just as Li Yaoxiang was chasing her to kill her, Su Luo, in front, dodged left then right, making him follow her in circles. The arm Li Yaoxiang lost gushed out with fresh blood, but he completely ignored it. His scarlet, crazed eyes were fixed on Su Luo. Now, killing Su Luo was his only goal. Up ahead was a fork in the road. In a flash, Su Luo's figure had entered the towering forest. Li Yaoxiang had chased her up to here and had already lost Su Luo's figure. Loathsome girl, this daddy orders you to come out. Come the fuck out. Li Yaoxiang clamored loudly with fury. Just when he was howling in fury, Su Luo, who had originally hid in the underbrush, slowly stole towards Li Yaoxiang's back. Due to the instinct from being an assassin in the previous world, her footsteps were as light and graceful as a butterfly. Her breathing was controlled to the point of being nothing. Consequently, Su Luo would noiselessly get nearer to Li Yaoxiang like this. The dagger hidden in her sleeves suddenly appeared. Even though Li Yaoxiang was seriously injured, he was still an 8th-ranked expert. With regards to his keen sense for danger, it was simply something Su Luo couldn't compare to. In fact, when Su Luo got within a distance of 3 meters from his back, he had already sensed her approaching. But he still stood with his back to Su Luo, his mouth hooking into a mocking and sinister smile. Loathsome girl, this was you delivering yourself to my door. Chapter 801. On the road down the mountain, 8, this time. Don't blame this old man for being impolite. The 3 meters distance became 2 meters, 1.6 meters. Finally, Su Luo's figure was nearly pressed close to Li Yaoxiang's back. Su Luo raised the dagger in her hand and slashed towards Li Yaoxiang's neck. Just at this moment of imminent peril, it seemed as if a pair of eyes had grown on Li Yaoxiang's back. He didn't turn around, but that pair of hands contained a formidable strength as he grabbed towards Su Luo. Li Yaoxiang turned around, that pair of ice-cold eyes staring fixedly at Su Luo. The corner of his mouth hooked into a dark, sinister smile. Loathsome girl, go die. His iron clamp-like pair of hands clutched towards Su Luo's slender neck, and it seemed as if Su Luo didn't have any strength to resist. Hidden on top of a tree, Ziyu's forehead wrinkled slightly, and he shook his head in disappointment at Su Luo. The disciple master chose this time was simply too stupid. However, without waiting for Ziyu to finish sighing, the scene in front of him changed and everything turned on its head. Originally, Li Yaoxiang was clutching towards Su Luo's neck while exposing a sinister and vengeful expression. He wanted to continue pinching her more tightly, itching to pinch this loathsome girl until she was cut in two. But his hands seemed to be controlled by a strange power. Regardless if it was speed or strength, all of it was weakened significantly. Just at this critical moment, the dagger Su Luo had hidden in her sleeves suddenly launched towards Li Yaoxiang's chest. Li Yaoxiang wanted to push Su Luo away with one move. He wanted to avoid this dagger, but he discovered to his despair he had no way of avoiding it. Indeed, it seemed to him, as an 8th-ranked strong expert, that when the loathsome girl's dagger stabbed towards him, its speed seemed so slow as to be no different than an ant's. But, at the same time, he also discovered that his own speed was also greatly reduced. Therefore, he could not shift away. So he could only watch helplessly as that dagger slowly stabbed into his chest. The dagger cut as if things were clay. With one blow, it could break things as if they were hair. It was incomparably sharp. Now, this dagger had entered Li Yaoxiang's chest to the hilt. Li Yaoxiang's pair of eyes were opened wide until they were perfectly round. Unwaveringly staring at Su Luo, not touching the ground, he stared at her. What is the reason? His voice trembled. He was in so much pain that his entire body was numb. But he still stared at Su Luo as he fell to the ground. Su Luo pulled out the dagger, and immediately, the blood in Li Yaoxiang's chest violently burst out. Su Luo indifferently took out a white silk handkerchief, one after another, swiping to wipe clean her treasured dagger. Her head was lowered from wiping clean the dagger. Then she suddenly raised her head. When she looked at Li Yaoxiang, the corner of her mouth was hooked into a wicked smile. Do you know where you are now? Where is it? A mouthful of blood rushed out of the corner of Li Yaoxiang's mouth. Su Luo coldly pointed to a square area. Nothingness of space. Her nothingness of space, where she was king. Naturally, nothingness of space was not omnipotent. Before, when Li Yaoxiang was at the peak of 8th rank, he could destroy her nothingness of space. But afterwards, Li Yaoxiang's arm was torn off by senior brother Ice Cube, and his body suffered serious injuries. His strength was greatly decreased. As a result, Su Luo thought of using her nothingness of space. Nothingness of space. Once a person entered it, Su Luo could control the gravity and speed of the person. Therefore, Su Luo set up this plan. She deliberately turned towards Li Yaoxiang's back, acting as if she wanted to kill him that way. But in fact, she had an ulterior motive. Her real purpose was not to cut his throat. Rather, it was to envelope him in nothingness of space. Because her nothingness of space was simply too small, only allowing 2 people to be standing abreast. Sure enough, Li Yaoxiang was fooled. Consequently, Su Luo had an opportunity that she could take advantage of. Su Luo, while smiling, told Li Yaoxiang these words for him to listen to. You are actually Space Mage. Li Yaoxiang opened his eyes wide with incredulous disbelief, staring fixedly at Su Luo. Chapter 802, Dark Forest 1. Su Luo laughed happily as she took a glance at him. A space mage? I was already one from earlier. You. Li Yaoxiang's eyes opened wide from shock as he stared fixedly at Su Luo. Who would have imagined this loathsome girl who offended people and was so dislikable was actually a space mage? A space mage, ah? The Jade Lakesley family had provoked such a space mage in the future. Once Li Yaoxiang became anxious, the blood from his chest sprayed out even more rapidly. Seeing Li family's second eldest in front of her with only a breath of life left, the corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a mocking sneer. How awe-inspiring was the Li Yaoxiang from before? In those days, he sat on up high. Inside and outside of Su Manor's great hall was a dense mass of kneeling people. That day, he was arrogant, despotic, and aggressive. So overbearing that with a convenient wave of his hands, he would have choked her to death. But so what? Fortunes rise and fall. The Li Yaoxiang right now, didn't he die by her hand? Watching Li Yaoxiang, who was lying on the ground with a gossamer of breath, the wicked part of Su Luo started to emerge. Time and time again, the Jade Lakesley family chased after her to kill her. If it was not for her good luck, she would have already been dead by now. This hatred, how could she forget? How could she forget? It was ending with just this one cut, and to let Li Yaoxiang die so peacefully? Certainly not. The corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a sinister smile. From up high, she looked at the dying Li Yaoxiang who was lying on the ground. I heard your Jade Lakesley family still hadn't given up on searching for Liao Yin? Su Luo had her hands crossed over her arms, raised an eyebrow, and looked at him with not quite a smile. Originally, Li Yaoxiang's consciousness was blurring. Momentarily, he seemed to have sobered up. You know? Su Luo leaned close to him and smiled demonically. Of course I know, because he was indirectly killed by me. Yu Li Yaoxiang. Having heard what was said, in the final dying moment of lucidity, he immediately spewed out a mouthful of blood. Jade Lakesley family had sent out so many people to search for Liao Yin, but he had already died in the hands of this loathsome girl in front of him. Lowly person. You. Li Yaoxiang struggled to get up, but Su Luo slightly poked him with the tip of her fingertip and he was pushed down once again. How could he still have the imposing manner of an 8th-ranked expert from before? He was even weaker than an ant. Li Yaoxiang had his eyes wide open, glaring fixedly at Su Luo, glaring fixedly. Finally, until he breathed his last breath, his eyes still glared at her, dying with unresolved grievances. Dying just like this, really a pity. I haven't practiced enough yet. Su Luo pretended to weep with crocodile tears and gave a sigh. On the side, Ziyu's figure slowly appeared. The corner of his mouth pursed slightly and cast a glance at Su Luo from the corner of his eyes. One could only see Ziyu's sleeves waved past. A red-hot flame appeared on Li Yaoxiang's body. Crackle, 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 the flame quickly spread on Li Yaoxiang's body and burned. Very quickly, Li Yaoxiang was burned until not even the bones remained. The arrogant Li family's second eldest was changed into a slice of light smoke, dissipating into the air. Being indifferent to killing is fine, but you must remember to destroy the body and wipe away all traces, Ziyu apathetically reminded Su Luo. The corner of Su Luo's mouth pursed slightly. To indifferently kill the second eldest from Jade Lakesley family, who was also brought over as a stone for her to step on in gaining battle experiences. This senior brother Ice Cube was really daring. After destroying the body and wiping away all traces, Su Luo was forced by Ziyu to once again hurry on at flying speed to the dark forest. There were 4 countries on this continent. It was divided into Eastern Ling, Western Jin, South Wind, and Northern Desert. These 4 countries were like their names and formed a circle. In the middle of them was the legendary Dark Forest. The Dark Forest occupied a very large area. With regards to size, it was bigger and even more vast than the sum of the 4 countries. Inside, aside from mountainous region, there were also marshes, wetlands, and all kinds of landforms. Therefore, at this moment, she must go in the southeast direction. They would occasionally come across a few flaming rabbits along the way. However, these kind of low-level magical beasts were already no threat to Su Luo, therefore, she passed through, not even glancing sideways at them. The flaming rabbits seemed to be able to detect Su Luo's smell. Before she could even draw near, their tiny short legs opened to sprint off far away. In fact, Su Luo was totally uninterested in them. Although she could eliminate them with just a raise of her hand, however, it would be hard to prevent the smell of blood from spreading in the process of a fight. If it resulted in attracting a powerful magical beast, that would be terrible. They kept journeying forward, traveling a distance of close to half a day's path. Suddenly, the space between Su Luo's eyebrows wrinkled slightly, and she halted her footsteps. "Senior brother, there is danger up ahead." Ziyu hurriedly nodded towards Su Luo without inquiring. Able to perceive danger from this distance, she couldn't be considered a useless piece of wood. Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly. Immediately, her whole body entered the state of being alert and prepared to fight. Very quickly, a rustling noise came from the ground. This sound came from all directions to come surround Su Luo. The wind blew past. A strong fishy stink came through the air. This smell made Su Luo's slender eyebrows knot slightly. After Su Luo looked back once again, well, senior brother Ice Cube had once again abandoned her and disappeared without a trace. As expected, this was a battle she had to fight alone. At this moment, she was quite suspicious, whether or not the little divine dragon entering a state of sleep was somehow related to Master. Chapter 804, Dark Forest 3. It's here. Su Luo quietly shouted and prepared for battle. Not long after, a countless number of golden-crowned snakes that hid the sky and covered the earth exploded out to rush towards Su Luo. Those densely packed golden-crowned snakes, every one of them was as thick as the opening of a bowl, spitting out a scarlet-red tongue as they sinisterly encircled towards Su Luo. At the same time, a bucket-thick golden-crowned snake king appeared in front of Su Luo. One could only see that it was about 20 meters in length. On top of its head was an alluring scarlet crest. A pair of silver eyes that was cold as ice stared at Su Luo without any regard. With one glance, Su Luo could see that this snake was the king of the golden-crowned snakes. And because of her carelessness, she had stepped into an area where the golden-crowned snakes were active, thus having the unique scent of the golden-crowned snakes stuck on her. Now, even if she wanted to leave, it was impossible. As a result, a fight could happen at any moment. The countless number of golden-crowned snakes that hid the sky and covered the earth rushed towards Su Luo. All around, it was slippery, and a sickening scent pervaded in the surroundings. Learn through experience. This was learning through experience. Su Luo condensed the spirit energy from her whole body. In a split second, countless fireballs exploded forth in a flash. The densely packed fireballs, even though they were small, but their power was astonishing. How could these small golden-crowned snakes and the Snake King be on par with her? At most, they were no more than second or third rank. And how could the fireballs that Su Luo condense out now be the same as those in the past? One fireball for one golden-crowned snake. Those small fireballs very accurately smashed into the golden-crowned snakes' wide-open mouths that were spitting out their tongue. Immediately, the surroundings let out burst after burst of sizzling sounds and the fragrance of roasted snakes. Last yum. The small golden-crowned snakes that had been smashed by the fireballs were rolling on the ground, holding their bellies. Black smoke continuously emitted from their mouths. It seemed very funny and interesting. However, there really were too many golden-crowned snakes. After one wave had fallen, immediately, another wave would quickly rush up from behind. They advanced dauntlessly wave after wave, like this, endlessly. They were like Chinese chives that would grow back after cutting off a portion. If it was someone else, they would have already died from anxiety. However, this was Su Luo. Su Luo's trump card was something others would find hard to reach. That piece of strange spirit stone could provide her an endless stream of the fire element. Inside Su Luo's space were a pile of bottles after bottles of advanced-grade spirit restoration pills that could help her recover her spirit energy. In this past more than half a year, how many times she had refined medicines would be hard to estimate. And the pills she had refined were never consumed. Consequently, she had accumulated a huge pile. As a result, Su Luo swallowed an advanced-grade spirit restoration pill and absorbed the fire element from inside the spirit stone. Bang, bang, bang once again. Countless densely packed little fireballs attacked towards the surroundings without distinction. The golden-crowned Snake King was not at all foolish. Seeing Su Luo once again launch the small fireballs, it quickly emitted a sharp sound. This was the distinctive language of the golden-crowned snakes. As a result, all the small golden-crowned snakes closed their mouths to prevent the small fireballs from smashing into their mouths. But, so what? The fireballs Su Luo attacked again within were enlarged countless-fold in size. The targets were their heads. Also, her fireballs had come out of the blue. The sky raining down with fire was truly a spectacle under the heavens. Thump, 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 the countless fireballs containing endless strength, with matchless accuracy, smashed towards the small golden-crowned snakes' heads. Hisses, the whole ground full of small golden-crowned snakes held their heads and fled in all directions. Unfortunately, they were all smashed into roasted snakes. It must be told that normally, Su Luo would ask the little divine dragon whether he had things to do or not, to spit out a few flames into the spirit stone. Over time, the flames inside the spirit stone had upgraded by a lot. The degree it burned naturally also increased sharply. Those small snakes that had been baptized by Su Luo's fireballs withdrew to the side from fear and trepidation, no matter how much the golden-crowned Snake King yelled at them. They did not dare attack Su Luo again. Chapter 805, Dark Forest 4. At this moment, the golden-crowned Snake King's pair of ice-cold silver eyes stared rigidly at Su Luo. A vicious light exploded forth from its eyes. Su Luo did not show any weakness as she welcomed its gaze. The corner of her mouth raised into a vicious smile. The golden-crowned Snake King was 20 meters long and at 4th rank. Its attack strength was slightly weak, but it was highly toxic. With regards to its growing speed, its crest could be used for medicine. From a certain written record that had appeared in Su Luo's mind. In this more than half a year on Cloud Mist Peak, besides refining medicine, Su Luo was also memorizing books by heart. Grandmaster Rong Yun had inspected Su Luo's memorization of books every day. Those books in his outer study room, whether they were useful or not, he had told Su Luo to memorize all of them. A golden-crowned snake, a king at the 4th rank, right? The corner of Su Luo's mouth raised into a sneer. A magical beast's strength, in normal situations, was stronger than humans of the same rank in a fight. In other words, a 4th rank golden-crowned snake was nearly equal in strength to a human at the 5th rank. However, Su Luo, with nothingness of space, within the same rank, her existence was one without equal. As a result, Su Luo was very confident in herself. The golden-crowned snake simply did not give Su Luo a chance to react. It swayed its massive body, but with nimble movements, it charged towards Su Luo. Flying through mid-air, it opened its huge, ferocious mouth. A thick, 3-colored smoke directly sprayed towards Su Luo. The 3-colored smoke was highly toxic and also possessed a corrosive nature. If she was hit, then her life would be forfeit. A sneer flashed across Su Luo's eyes just as the 3-colored thick smoke was sprayed forth. Su Luo waved her hands and nothingness of space seamlessly covered her body. The nothingness of space seemed to be a protective barrier, protecting Su Luo completely. Su Luo moved the nothingness of space. With her toe tapping the ground, her figure flew into the air. Grabbed the snake by grabbing its spine. Su Luo's hands held that deeply cold dagger, Yanhua. She raised it high and suddenly slashed down towards the golden-crowned Snake King's spine. However, at this moment, the golden-crowned Snake King's very agile tail whipped towards Su Luo's body. However, Su Luo unexpectedly did not dodge. Bang! A loud sound echoed. The massive tail whipped against Su Luo's protective cover. The protective cover swayed a little, but did not have any trace of shattering into pieces. Just when the cover was being shaken, Su Luo's eyes flashed with a cold light. Afterwards, her hand lifted and the dagger came down. The dagger ruthlessly pierced into the golden-crowned snake's spine area. At the same time, Su Luo still held the dagger and mixed around inside its body. The spine was pierced through, and the massive body of the golden-crowned Snake King became slightly stiff. The dagger was too short, whereas his body was too huge. As a result, even though this thrust injured it, but it was not fatal. Immediately, the golden-crowned Snake King became enraged. It turned around its snake head. All the scales on its body stuck up and suddenly rushed in the direction Su Luo stood to knock her down. Seeing the thunderous attack that carried the weight of 150,000 kilograms ramming her head-on, a cold sneer appeared in the depths of Su Luo's eyes. With a wave of her hands, nothingness of space protective cover once again encased her body. She stood motionlessly in her original place, waiting for the golden-crowned Snake King to ram her. Closer. 30 meters, 21 meters, 15 meters, 9 meters, 3 meters. Just when the golden-crowned Snake King was on the verge of ramming into Su Luo's body, one could only hear a whooshing sound. The golden-crowned Snake King actually brushed past Su Luo, and its body didn't stop and continuously charged forward. Pretense. Su Luo was jolted slightly and immediately returned to her senses. Hunted for a sparrow all day long, and actually was pecked in the eye by the sparrow. How could she have imagined that this violent golden-crowned snake king was actually this two-faced? It was actually making a feint and not a real attack on her. Rather, its intent was to flee. And she was actually so idiotic as to let it escape. Only at this moment did Su Luo truly realize the painstaking effort of the beautiful teacher's heart. Even though her promotion speed was very fast, but her battle experience was really too little. Now, she was actually played by the golden-crowned snake king that lacked intelligence. Chapter 806, Dark Forest, 5. Want to escape? It's not that easy. Su Luo darkly snorted. Without turning her head, she immediately chased in the direction of that two-faced, cunning golden-crowned snake king with all her might. Just recalling that she was actually deceived by a snake, Su Luo wished she could just grab her own head. The golden-crowned snakes inherently excelled in speed. The Snake King's speed was even faster. With lightning speed, it was already more than 100 meters away. Its huge body seemed bloated, but that didn't hinder its movements whatsoever. Su Luo put her spirit dance steps to full use and madly chased after it at full speed. If she was truly to let an insignificant golden-crowned snake king escape, where would she still have any face left? Just like the golden-crowned snake king, Su Luo also excelled in speed. As a result, one person chased and one snake fled in the endless dark forest. Only, this time, the person trying to escape being chased was not Su Luo. Unconsciously, the sun gradually moved to the west, and the distance between Su Luo and the golden-crowned snake king had also already been reduced to within 50 meters. 50 meters, very good. The corners of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a sinister sneer. Her feet still continued their fast movements, but both of her hands, as fast as lightning, formed complicated hand seals, one after another. At last, the hand seals came together to create a huge palm print, noiselessly appearing above the golden-crowned snake king's head. "Smash it for me!" Su Luo shouted out loudly. The great dimensional imprint descended from the sky. Bang! It issued out a violent sound of impact. The golden-crowned snake king's head wasn't hit at all. Its perception of danger was very sharp, therefore, when the great dimensional imprint emerged, it shot out at the quickest speed. However, even if used all of its strength, it was still only at the 4th rank. How fast could its speed go up by? Therefore, even though its head had escaped a calamity, however, its long tail couldn't escape at all. Thus, the great dimensional imprint firmly smashed down on the golden-crowned snake king's tail. Just as the golden-crowned snake king had the thought of being a brave warrior that broke their own wrist and suffer the pain of cutting off its tail, Su Luo finally caught up from behind. Su Luo jumped high. As she dropped down, nimble as a leopard cat, her figure flew onto the body of the golden-crowned snake king. This time, Su Luo had learned from experience. The very small dagger, when faced with the enormous golden-crowned snake king, clearly couldn't display its full strength. Therefore, Su Luo, facing that spine area where she had gouged out a hole, immediately shot in a fireball containing endless power. Bang! The fireball exploded inside the golden-crowned snake king's body and issued out a burst of a smothered exploding sound. The golden-crowned snake king's body violently rocked, evidently in extreme pain. The spine was destroyed, the spirit power in its body left in an instant. Adding in that 1/3 of its tail had been cut off a moment ago, it had already lost the majority of its strength. Therefore, at the moment, the golden-crowned snake king was already on the verge of death. Ultimately, its enormous body couldn't keep it up and directly turned over, falling to the ground. Its body whipped about, until finally, it motionlessly stiffened in place. The golden-crowned snake king that originally was cruel and couldn't be tamed, had finally died in the end. Su Luo took the crested meat on the head of the golden-crowned snake king and conveniently put it into her space's storehouse. Suddenly, she recalled another matter. She remembered from the book she had memorized that it had once mentioned magical beasts of 4th rank and higher would automatically condense out a crystal stone. Generally speaking, A fourth-rank magical beast would condense out a red-colored crystal stone. A fifth-rank magical beast would condense out an orange-colored crystal stone. A sixth-rank magical beast would condense out a yellow-colored crystal stone, and so on. Then, a 10th-rank magical beast could condense out a purple-colored crystal stone. It was said that in the center of the magical beasts forest, there were 10th-ranked magical beasts living there. However, so what? A 10th-rank magical beast, how could a human at the 10th rank even beat it? Therefore, thinking about it was thoughts wasted in vain. Space. For people who were leaving home for a journey, they would kill for this absolutely amazing equipment. Su Luo took out the tent she had already prepared from within her space and placed it on level ground. She felt that her stomach was somewhat hungry and decided to light a fire to make a pot of fresh, aromatic, and delicious snake soup. As for raw materials, they were naturally drawn from local resources. Such a huge gold-crowned snake king, even if she ate it for a month, she would not be able to finish it. From a pile in the corner of her space, Su Luo took out a simple iron rack and hooked up the iron pot to the pitchfork-like rack. Then, she began to deal with the snake meat. Snake soup was not at all easy to make. Su Luo took hold of the softest part of the golden-crowned snake king's body, skinned it, then threaded the flesh. Afterwards, she used snake fat to roughly stir-fry it once through. Because she had her space, she definitely brought along cooking wine, scallion, ginger, garlic, and other seasonings. Thus, she poured in the cooking wine, coarse salt, and then added sliced ginger, thin strips of scallion, ground pepper, and so on. This area was still considered the forest's outer surroundings, so she could still light a fire for the time being. In another 2 days, Su Luo would not dare to light a fire so openly and without fear like this again. In any case, the time in her space was slowed down by tenfold. As a result, Su Luo decided to make several pots of soup, then keep them inside her space. So when the time came, it would be convenient to eat. After approximately 1 hour, the fresh, aromatic, and delicious snake soup was done. Ziyu, who liked to pretend not to be around when Su Luo was fighting, now actually quietly showed himself. A hint of a smile appeared in Su Luo's eyes. Smilingly, she called out to senior brother Ice Cube to come over and eat snake soup together. Seeing the clean bowl and chopsticks placed neatly in front of him, the corner of Ziyu's eyes ticked slightly. Chapter 808, Dark Forest. 7. Firewood, rice, oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, and tea. All kinds of daily necessities, not lacking a thing. Pots, bowls, ladles, basins of every variety, and an entire set consisting of tables, chairs, and low stools. This split second, it gave him a sudden feeling. In this extremely dangerous dark forest, she was actually comfortable and content, as if she was on vacation. Presumably, only the person in front of him would be like this. Ziyu silently and noiselessly accepted the bowl and drank the entire bowl down with one toss of his head. After drinking a bowlful, it seemed as though his entire stomach felt very comfortable. The so-called after eating a person would be soft-spoken. Ziyu had originally wanted to be strictly impartial and incorruptible as he demanded Su Luo maintain night vigil. But when he was about to say the words, it became, the first half before midnight, you keep vigil. Very clearly, what he didn't say was that after midnight, he would take over and keep vigil. As everyone knew, keeping vigil before midnight was the most relaxing shift. After midnight, because of the oppressive pressure Ziyu gave off from his entire body as a strong expert, as a result, all the magical beasts automatically made a strategic withdrawal. Su Luo's first night after arriving the dark forest passed by safely like this. On the morning of the second day, Su Luo had woken up early to hasten on her journey. However, what made her depressed was, after only rushing along a short distance, she didn't see magical beasts, but she again saw 2 corpses lying on the side of the road. These 2 corpses were the same as that corpse from before. They were also dressed completely in black clothing with a black headscarf. Their entire bodies were shrouded in the sinister darkness of black-clothed assassins. Compared to the one before, the states of death of these two were even more bitter. One of them had been sliced across the waist and cut into two sections. The upper body was separated from the lower half by 5 meters. The other one had its head separated from the neck, the same with the body and head in separate places. The ground was sprinkled full of blood, and the fishy smell was very strong. And at this time, magical beasts, having smelled the fishy scent, were continuously coming from the surroundings. Su Luo frowned slightly. This place was about to become a purgatory where magical beasts fought over food. It's better that she avoid it and leave. Just when she wanted to leave, she discovered that from the back of a boulder was exposed a small deerskin boot. A woman? Su Luo's thoughts moved, and she cautiously walked over. Now, appearing before her was a young woman wearing a goose-yellow silk dress with a very pretty face. But now, her complexion was pale as paper, her forehead coated with dripping sweat. Su Luo followed it and looked down and discovered that her goose-yellow silk dress was covered in bloodstains. Almost no place was clean, like an Azura that had crawled out from hell. Su Luo slightly inspected her, then her thin eyebrows knitted somewhat, because she unexpectedly found 13 sword wounds of varying sizes on the young woman's body. Quite clearly, the deaths of those two black-clothed people from before were bestowed by her, and the wounds on her body were also caused by the black-clothed people. Su Luo wasn't the kind of person who liked to meddle in other people's business, because she knew meddling in other people's business meant trouble. However, Ziyu's one sentence made her stop in her tracks. Save her. Ziyu's voice was still as indifferent as before, without a trace of being moved. Senior brother wants to play the hero that saves the beauty to create a story? Su Luo looked at him, smiling happily. The magical beasts from the area had already arrived to surrounded them. If she rushed out, carrying fresh food that was dripping with blood, she would definitely become the target of their attack. Senior brother's aim couldn't be this, right? Su Luo suspiciously sized up Ziyu with several glances. Ziyu's eyes were still tranquil and without a ripple. He only faintly said a few words. She comes from Purgatory City. Purgatory City. With regards to Su Luo, this Purgatory City was a mysterious place. 1 city, 2 palace halls, 3 palaces, and 4 Holy Lands people. She also knew a few, but everyone treated Purgatory City as an important matter that must be kept secret. So, they avoided it and did not speak about it. So much so that Su Luo discovered that Purgatory City, these 2 words, could still stop young children from crying at night. As a result, Su Luo's heart grew curious about Purgatory City, but all along, she had no chance to uncover its veil of mystery. Did the young woman before her eyes come from Purgatory City? Chapter 809, Dark Forest, 8. Senior brother Ice Cube rarely talked. Since he demanded that she save, then she might as well save this person. As a result, Su Luo lifted this young woman drenched in blood onto her shoulder and turned around to rush madly forward. Her speed soared to the peak. Just now, the 2 black-dressed persons' corpses were gnawed away by magical beasts until not even the bones were left. If she was late by 1 step, even though this young woman who hadn't breathed her last, she certainly would also be torn into pieces by magical beasts. Following behind Su Luo was a row of magical beasts. In addition, they were the 4th and 5th rank kind. Fortunately, Su Luo's speed was extremely fast. After dashing for 4 hours, she was finally able to throw off those magical beasts. The place where Su Luo stopped was a meadow. All around was mattress-like green grass. They were soft, as if a thick layer of blankets was covering the ground. She placed the injured young woman on the ground. Only after that did she start to diagnose and treat her wounds. Having gone through the mad rush just a moment ago, the many wounds on this young woman's body had burst open again. The internal injuries were even more serious. If she was not hanging on for the last breath, she would have already died. Su Luo took out 2 bottles from her space. She gave it to take internally and applied some externally. This young woman's 13 sword wounds. The shallow ones were merely superficial flesh wounds, but the more serious ones exposed her thick bones. It looked extremely shocking. At this moment, Ziyu had already disappeared from where he stood. With regards to this enigmatic and faintly discernible senior brother Ice Cube, Su Luo was already used to it. She tore off the goose yellow-colored silk dress that this young woman was wearing that was covered in bloodstains. In passing, she burned this silk dress, then it turned into ashes. Before, Apothecary Long had gifted Su Luo with a bottle of Rebirth of Flesh pill. This just so happened to be useful right now. Rebirth of Flesh pill could even regenerate a broken-off limb, to say nothing of sword wounds. The Rebirth of Flesh pill was divided into 2 pieces, one big, one small. The small one was taken orally, and that big piece needed to be crushed into powder, then mixed with celestial spirit water to make an ointment and smeared onto the wounds. Su Luo had a lot of spare dresses in her space, and this young woman's figure was about the same as her. Consequently, Su Luo retrieved a brand new, never-worn dress and changed her clothing with it. Without that pungent, bloody smell and also with the pressure Ziyu gave off as a strong expert, as a result, there weren't any magical beasts that didn't have eyes that would gather here. Now, it was inadvisable to move this young woman, and Su Luo was also in no hurry to be on her way. Chapter 8:10, Dark Forest 9. Have I been unconscious for long? She lifted her head, and with a burning gaze, stared at Su Luo. Su Luo thought about it, close to a day. One day, this young woman suddenly jumped up and stared fixedly at Su Luo. A day's time and my wounds would get better to this degree? Fine. The results of her treatment were too good. Sure enough, this was also troublesome. Su Luo shrugged her shoulders and declined to comment. Is it you who saved me? She took a quick glance and sized up Su Luo from top to bottom. A doubtful expression flashed through her eyes. In the dark forest, the magical beasts ran amok. An insignificant 5th rank actually dared to walk inside by herself and also saved her? You could say that. Even though her original intent was not to invite trouble, this was an order by Senior Brother Ice Cube. This young woman's eyes narrowed slightly, and she stood up and just started to leave. A touch of interest slid through the depths of Su Luo's eyes. This young woman's temperament of total lack of regard was similar to hers in the previous life. Unwittingly, she had a little appreciation of her. A favor like a drop of water will be repaid with a gushing spring. To say nothing of the favor in saving a life. Are you just going to walk away like this? Su Luo's tone was mild, but ice-cold. This favor I will not forget to repay in the future. I will repay this favor. That young woman, with her back straight, walked directly ahead. She didn't turn around, but waved her hands confidently and at ease at Su Luo, who was behind her, saying her goodbyes. Su Luo had both arms crossed over as she leaned against an ancient tree. Seeing this, she couldn't help but to smile lightly. This young woman really did have a personality. However, originally, she did not want to attract trouble, so she didn't want to save her. Originally, she didn't have any thought that the other party would repay her for the help she gave. So, her leaving like this, with regards to Su Luo and she herself, was the best choice. However, she still hadn't asked her for a name. Su Luo pondered while holding her chin, muttering to herself, Senior brother, in the end. Who is she? Su Luo raised her head and locked onto Ziyu, who was sitting on top of a tree. Senior brother Ice Cube didn't speak for quite a while. Just when Su Luo thought he wouldn't reply, he said a sentence that floated out. Purgatory City, Holy Maiden, Zi Yin, 7th rank, worthy of being the laconic Senior brother Ice Cube, where one word was worth 1,000 in gold. A short 8 words nearly had covered all the important information about this young woman. Her identity, position, her family background and origin, name and strength. However, the Holy Maiden from Purgatory City seemed to have a very powerful status. Seemed that her age didn't differ much from her own, but her strength was already at the 7th rank. It could clearly be seen that Purgatory City was a place where strong experts came forth in large numbers. Let's go. Su Luo had the map tucked in her arms and walked towards her destination. The southeast Great Valley, Red Acacia Seed. This was the real purpose of her coming to the Dark Forest. If she and that Miss Ziyin was fated, naturally, they would see each other again. Having walked around 2 circles in the magical beast forest, Su Luo discovered that she was lost. Senior brother, you are certain there are no problems with this map? Su Luo's pair of eyes was staring at that map made of sheepskin. Her complexion appeared as if she was close to blowing her top. Ziyu silently glanced at her, then took a quick glance at the sheepskin map. Finally, he withdrew his gaze. Senior brother Ice Cube, why don't you say something? There really isn't a problem with this map? Su Luo's line of sight was glaring fixedly at him. She had walked according to this map, but after walking and walking, she had discovered that up ahead, it had wandered away from the southeast Great Valley. Ziyu silently slanted a glance at her, then silently, his gaze returned to look at the faint place far away. Map was given by Master. The implication was that if there was a mistake, then that was the problem with Master? Or maybe Master deliberately gave her an incorrect map. Thinking up to here, Su Luo's forehead whipped out. Was this beautiful teacher's tempo to drive her to her death? Not only did he limit the number of times senior brother Ice Cube could help her, he also gave her a fake map? Where would there be a master that was so harsh to his disciple? Chapter 811, Assassination in the Forest, 1. Nothing could be done. Su Luo, who had been played, could only throw that map into her space. Wait until she returned. She would definitely calculate this debt with Master. Now, for she who was lost, the most important thing was to find a way out. Just at this moment, Su Luo's earlobe moved slightly. Senior brother, there seems to be the sound of fighting up ahead. Su Luo's eyes momentarily shone, just like a cat that had stolen a fish. In fact, because of Ziyu's cultivation, he had heard it earlier. Only, he still held fast to the principle of showing no concern until giving Su Luo a hand in a life-and-death crisis situation. Therefore, he definitely wouldn't utter a word to warn her. Having heard what was said, he only nodded briefly. Su Luo was already used to his indifference. She shrugged and walked together with him towards the fight. Ziyu's figure had already disappeared. Su Luo had gotten used to it long ago and was no longer surprised by it. She bent her body and hid in the lush underbrush. Through the foliage, she observed the 2 people fighting up ahead. With only one glance, Su Luo's brows immediately nodded slightly. Because she discovered, one of the people fighting in front of her, she had briefly met by fate. Purgatory City's young woman with a brash personality Ziyin. Her opponent, Su Luo, was also very familiar with. Because along this journey, she had already seen no less than 3 similar corpses. Black clothes, black head covering, whole body shrouded in the dark secrecy of an assassin. Bang! The battle between the 2 people was very intense. Ziyin held a bloodthirsty cold sword that glittered like frost and snow. The long hook in the hands of the person dressed in black was sharp and threatening. The person dressed in black evidently had a higher cultivation than Ziyin. His hook had an incomparably destructive strength, as if it could conquer every obstacle. It hooked over from the side, and a deep cut was slashed onto Ziyin's right arm. Blood droplets flew out, and the dark red blood immediately dyed her sleeves red. Ziyin's complexion was calm as water, as if that cut didn't affect her at all. The long sword in her hand returned a thrust, fiercely attacking as if she completely lacked any regard for her life. Being fierce to others was not frightening, but people who were fierce to themselves were scary. Ziyin seemed pretty and sweet, but when she gave her all, she would exert all her strength. A bloodthirsty cold light flashed through the dark eyes of the black-clothed person. Pang! The 2 people's swords crossed in midair. Sparks flew in all directions, and it flickered with golden light, but it was also filled with a cold, murderous aura. The 2 people crisscrossed and passed each other, separating to stand on 2 different sides. In this exchange, Ziyin was cut by the hook again in the stomach, with blood flying in all directions. If it weren't for the fact that she dodged faster, frighteningly, her 5 viscera and 6 bowls would have immediately separated from her body. Ziyin's appearance was cold and solemn, long hair dancing in disarray. Momentarily, her imposing manner was heroic. She put away the long sword and her fingers slowly rotated around, making an incomparably complicated seal. Very quickly, a dazzling ball of light appeared in her hand. The ball of light seemed to contain the endless strength of heaven and earth. It issued an extremely terrifying aura and gave off an oppressive feeling. Go! A frightening movement like a gigantic wave and incomparably strong, shot towards the black-clothed person. The ball of light was tumultuous, impossible to block. A terrifying expression flashed through the black-clothed person's eyes. He also put away his long hook, both hands unhurriedly streaking across. Very quickly, his entire body gave of a huge, terrifying aura. Above his head, a huge handprint that covered the sky appeared. The kind of aura that could rend a person's soul, giving people a terrifying, suffocating feeling. Simply made people unable to breathe. The great dimensional imprint? Su Luo was bent over, and an astonished expression flashed through her eyes. Yes, that's right. This black-clothed person, before her, what he used was the great dimensional imprint. That endless, grand, and domineering aura would even make a person's soul be deeply afraid. This great dimensional imprint, compared to hers, was much more formidable. Then, this was something that young woman Ziyin would never be able to block. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.